What is up, everyone? We are here bright and early relative to the DFS world, at least for a little special NBA Deeper Dive, the Saturday edition, where I'll take you through along with my good friend Greg Ehrenberg. And I'm just going to mess up the intro here, but I'm Chris Specs. And now there's no build up to Greg at all, but we do the show with Greg here on Saturdays. So here's Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
That's cool. Saturday's a little lax. By the way, Jordan, I feel like he gave us like a 90-second countdown. That seemed to be a little longer than usual. I don't know. Did you feel that also? It seemed like it went on for a very long time.
I was vibing to the music, and I think Jordan was confused if I was nodding along to the beat or if it was me going like, yeah, go ahead and start the count. So either way, we are here, and we are brought to you guys by SuperDraft, and they're the reason this show exists. They're the reason that Greg and I are here, the reason that we have an extra special 90-minute show coming up after us with EMAC and your pal, Terry McBride. EMAC's not your pal anymore. Terry McBride is your pal, so hang out with those guys. They'll take you through the normal live before lock hour, then an extra half hour for SuperDraft, where they've got some gigantic contests tonight. Really every night you should be playing over on superdraft.io or downloading SuperDraft in the App Store and use the promo code Awesemo21 when you sign up, because they will match your $50 deposit when you sign up with $50 of their own in Super Cash, instant release money that you can play and win. Really some gigantic Super Bowl contests that they have. I think it's going to have a tough time filling tomorrow, and that's sort of the goal over there. Going to be a lot of overlay, a lot of decreased rake days, and that's the SuperDraft value, along with the projections that we have at Awesemo.com. It's going to be a lot of ways for you to make money. So play over at SuperDraft. And then yesterday we had a little $1,000 value, 100,000 Caesars Rewards points giveaway thanks to them, and that's the kind of stuff they want to do for you guys. So support SuperDraft and play over there and watch the EMAC and Terry SuperDraft show coming up after Live Before Lock. But let's get into this one, Greg. And any overall thoughts? I know we were talking a little bit before we came on the air that we're expecting this could be a lot of moving parts here, even more than usual for a slate. But what are your overall, let's say, 30-mile elevator pitch views on the slate so far?
Yeah, I have no clue who I'm going to be rostering by the time the slate locks right now. One thing that I think is going to be interesting is, so the NBA has set times that they release the injury reports every day. So 5:30, the next injury report drops. There's some teams that are going to have really important situations that we have no clue who's playing or not for them. Like the Thunder, they had all the value in the world yesterday. We have no clue if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing today. We don't know if Lou Dort is playing today. We don't know if Theo Maledon's playing today. We don't know if Al Horford's playing today, because they haven't released an injury report yet. So those guys could, some of those guys could remain out. Al Horford, veteran, he hasn't been playing in back-to-backs this year, so I kind of assume he isn't playing. But I don't know that for sure, because they had all these other guys who were out yesterday, but we don't have updates on some of these other players. So the Thunder could have all the value they had yesterday because the prices haven't changed all that much. They have on some players, but it could be a situation we just load up on Thunder value, or it could be a spot where we just don't really want to target them all that much. And that's something that makes it really hard to know what to do with on this slate, because if we see Maledon back in, if Dort is back in, if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is back in, then all that value from yesterday dries up. But those guys could just as easily been out. But the Thunder didn't submit an injury report for the 1:30 injury report.
Yeah, there's definitely something with the Thunder. I was assuming that Maledon would still be out because of the health protocol issues that he had. Also, Dort too, the knee injury seemed like he'd be one that kept him out for a while. So this whole day, I kind of put everything together with the assumption that we wouldn't have Maledon, we wouldn't have Dort, we would have the same grouping that we had yesterday. And we saw Al Horford had a monster day with somebody that I ended up a lot heavier on than I expected and was pretty happy with that outcome. Diallo had a nice assist day, rebounding a little bit less so in the grouping here, where really a gigantic front court for the Thunder. But that's one we're going to have to watch throughout the day here and keep an eye on, because if they had, the guys out yesterday plus one more guy out, then they couldn't play, I think, because they would be at 8 guys, I'm pretty sure. So something that is important to know here, and maybe means that if we don't have Maledon, if we don't have Dort, you're probably going to see everybody from yesterday back in today. We're going to go game by game here, as we always do on the Deeper Dive, with the precedent that Lofty and Adams set every single day. Alex too, when he's on. So make sure you guys hit that like button, get it going here with some positive energy, and we'll talk about the first game on this slate, Chicago in Orlando. 112.8 implied points on Chicago side, 111.8 implied points on the Orlando side. We just saw this matchup yesterday. Vooch went off in a major way, started incredibly hot, kept it going, finished just shy of 80 fantasy points by the end of the night. The rest of this game, really, Cole Anthony was the one that stood out in Orlando side. But on Chicago, we do have no Lowry Markkanen. On the game yesterday, we also saw Thad Young starting the second half, got a little more minutes. Patrick Williams was, I think, the top performer other than Garrett Temple, who looked pretty decent as value. But Greg, let's talk the Chicago side first. I still think Thad's viable. I also don't mind going to Denzel Valentine as a value play. To me, it looks like a solid value. Awesemo has him for 27 fantasy points on DraftKings. I think it looks like a solid spot for those guys. Don't see much else here for me, though, besides Thad and Denzel. So what do you see for your side on Chicago?
Yeah, so first of all, I did the early show with Josh yesterday. I told him some of your Thad Young takes about how you'd been watching tape. Nearly gave him a heart attack. He almost died on the show. He was not thrilled when I brought up that you'd been watching Thad Young tape and brought up some of the points you referenced about some of the more of the offense running through him more than it had in previous games. So I was really trying to push Thad as a play a little bit, not because I actually liked Thad all that much for yesterday's slate. I thought there was better plays that opened up overall, but it was really giving Josh a bad time that I was bringing up that.
Somebody mentioned that on Live Before Lock yesterday too with Terry. They brought it up, and I was like, with Josh, whenever a guy's role changes or the sample size is small and it doesn't make sense with what he knows of a player and what the data says, like it's like a caveman seeing fire for the first time, where he's just more scared than not. He doesn't care about the opportunity. So that was my official rebuttal to Josh. But I get it. Thad Young is a guy that's never going to be the most sexy play, but sometimes those little changes, like a guy playing the 5 all of a sudden for meaningful minutes, I think can change things. So Greg, where do you land now with that? He had another nice day yesterday for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, so at least on Fanduel, he's easy to not play because he's center eligible and he's fairly expensive. So on Fanduel, there's 3 primary centers that we want to build around. I don't want to get too far ahead and, really ruin some of the content for later in the show, but Thad Young is not one of the 3 centers I'm looking to build around for this slate. So not somebody's going to make it into my player pool. On Draftkings, I think you can make a better case for him, but still with his price up, not somebody I'm going to be getting to with regularity, especially because it looks like somewhere we're going to have a lot of value on the slate. We don't know who's in or out for OKC right now. The same goes for the Nets, right? We don't know who's playing for the Nets tonight. And a lot of it has to do because these NBA's goofy protocols and their health and safety thing, which really makes no sense and defies logic. Like if you're trying to look through a situation and be like, oh, this happened, therefore this is going to happen. Like, I don't know, like the Kevin Durant situation made so little sense yesterday that I think there's going to be a considerable amount of value on Brooklyn and OKC. I just don't know who those players are right now. But that's also going to make it where I think my lineups are going to trend towards being really stars and scrubs for this slate. That's really the long way of, that's the short version of what I'm trying to say there, is that there's going to be a lot of value on the slate. I'm going to plug in a lot of cheap values, and then I'm going to be looking at some of the expensive guys. So when I look at some of the mid-tier values that are kind of fringy, like Thad Young, just isn't going to make it into my lineups. And I'm being a little long-winded here because I know we have extra time to kill.
No, it's fair. We got 9 games to get through, and I'm with you on it. Like, honestly, right now, the first crunch I ran before this, did my sorting process just so I had a read on where I would normally be that during the frantic process we have when hosting Live Before Lock shows. And I only had that 7%, so that'd be actually a little bit under the field. But just to me, a guy that I'm with you. I think the value is really the more important thing. Denzel Valentine was a guy that was popping up a lot more for me because of that. He's only 4K on DraftKings, has a nice projection on him. But that, to me, just a player I would have in a pool in the hopes that we see a 40-point Thad Young day rather than a mid-30s Thad Young day. But I think either way, he doesn't kill you on DraftKings. Different story on FanDuel. Are you with Denzel Valentine, though, at his price point, or do you want to chase Patrick Williams after he picked up the start, played some good minutes yesterday? Still no Otto Porter for these guys, and now no Lauri Markkanen too. So there are minutes to go around for those 3-4 position guys.
Yeah, I much prefer Patrick Williams to Denzel Valentine. Valentine's had a couple of good games in a row, but he's played 19 and 20 minutes in those games. So I'm not all that confident in his workload. Patrick Williams is going to play all the minutes he can handle. So I feel much better about him. I'm not saying I'm not going to get to Denzel Valentine because I have a minimal amount of exposure in the lineups I did right now, but I don't think he's going to be a super high priority for me. Patrick Williams will be. And I think I'm going to prefer some cheap Nets guys and some cheap OKC guys at the end of the day over somebody like Denzel Valentine, just because I don't see myself projecting him for even like 25 or 26 minutes. I think he's going to continue to play somewhere around the low 20s minutes. And somebody who in the past hasn't even been a great fantasy producer. So I understand there's a bunch of guys out here, but still Garrett Temple is going to get minutes. Chandler Hutchinson is going to get minutes. Like we talked about Thad Young, Patrick Williams, there's other guys in the mix here that are going to get minutes. So I just can't give Denzel Valentine a big enough workload for me to want to really get to him at a really significant clip.
And I think for me, it's going to depend on what Awesemo gives him minutes wise. I talk about a lot on here. I use Awesemo's projections as a frame of reference, but make my own and then use Awesemo's stat lines, which are the minutes projections that he puts together and painstakingly pays attention to every rotational detail. Today, he's got Denzel at 28 minutes. So I'm curious to see if that does drop a little bit. Maybe it depends on the starters, or maybe that's just the run that he expects him to get. But I agree. If you're putting him in for, let's say 24 minutes instead of 28, I think he gets a little bit less appealing. So certainly something to watch here that could pivot around a little bit. And it could make Patrick Williams more appealing, who Awesemo does have for 34 minutes here. So definitely a more secure minutes load, despite some less usage for Williams than a guy like Valentine. The Orlando side, though, I think is really the one where people are going to want to go to a lot. Vooch yesterday, a massive day. And I think one that you could have easily predicted going against Chicago, who plays fast. The defense still so bad. Now a 111 defense efficiency rating for them. Not a good mark, one of the worst marks in the league. In fact, really in that Kings territory, even if not quite that bad. And Vooch looks solid to me again, though I would say I don't expect him to have that 70 fantasy point upside again, but 31% usage rate in court time with no Fultz and no Aaron Gordon, both guys still out. I think Fournier takes a little bit more back today, maybe a little bit less for Cole Anthony than we saw yesterday, but Vooch to me still a very solid play and one that I expect to be heavy on, even with some value or value-ish centers today like DeMarcus Cousins. Where are you landing with Vooch though? Are you going there heavy, or do you feel like maybe he has a bit of a down day and maybe just a little bit overowned for that?
I love him on DraftKings. I think he's really hard to get away from an 8,900. I mean, we saw him in this matchup yesterday, and while I don't necessarily look at just things like DVP or like, oh, look at what he did the last time he played against this team, it's the reality of the other situations. Like you said, there's no Aaron Gordon, there's no Markelle Fultz, so all the usage has to go to Nikola Vucevic. And look at what his minutes have been in the last couple of games without them. He's played 37 minutes in back-to-back games. And the point also has to be taken that the Bulls do not have a good defensive front court. That's really the main reason that Vucevic had a big game yesterday, and that and the extra usage. They didn't add anybody in the last 16 hours that's going to be able to guard him. There's no savior walking through that door for them. There's no Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel. He's going to torch them again, most likely. But where I think there's a difference with Vucevic is DraftKings versus Fanduel, because there's a lot of flexibility at the center spot where you could roster more than one of them on DK. Then we talk about FanDuel, where DeMarcus Cousins is really cheap. There's also Andre Drummond, who's just been priced down a ton, and there's upside there. So while Vucevic is definitely in play for me on FanDuel, and by the way, I talked before about how there's three centers I like, it's those three guys. To me, Vucevic is not as high a priority option as somebody like Cousins for cheap, and those are kind of the decisions we have to make. So I'm going to have Vucevic in my player pool, but I'm going to get to him a whole lot more on DraftKings just because of the positional differences on the two sites.
I think it's also worth noting, too, Frank Mason being on this team now, a guy who's historically been a good per-minute producer. He made his debut yesterday, played, and this is a back-to-back match with the same teams in case you somehow missed that in the beginning part here, but played 16 minutes, kind of did the Frank Mason thing, 18% usage, assisted well, 4 assists in that time frame. So Frank Mason, I just wanted to point him out because he's minimum salary, and it feels like if this game does get weird in some way that Vooch fails, or I don't even know what would it take for this to happen, but Mason projects well for me just as a value at minimum salary on DraftKings. And just wanted to point it out. Greg, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Frank Mason here, but it's just, a guy in a back-to-back who's they want to see, I think, while they have access to him on whatever term deal he is. Just somebody I think could end up having more upside than he'll probably have ownership for sure.
I mean, I have him projected for right around 15 fantasy points on DraftKings. Definitely wouldn't be somebody I would consider on FanDuel because there's no need where the min price is higher. But still, this is a situation where I think that by the time the slate actually locks, and definitely in 30 minutes when we get that next injury report, we're going to have such a better idea of what the values are actually going to look like on the slate. So if nothing was to change between now and lock, and it's just all of a sudden like, hey, all the Thunder guys are playing, Kevin Durant's in, and there just isn't value in those situations, then I'd be digging a little deep for value, and I maybe would find myself on Frank Mason. But by the time we get more news, I doubt that he's going to be somebody that's going to be in my lineups at all.
Do you see any Fournier or Cole Anthony? Cole Anthony had that big day yesterday. Any of these guys popping up for you at all? Terrence Ross, I think, too, maybe on the cusp of usability.
Yeah, Cole Anthony on FanDuel for sure. He's in play on DraftKings as well, but a really strong. He's only 5,000 on FanDuel, so that makes him really hard to get away from. He's one of the top point guard options. I liked Evan Fournier yesterday, and he was okay. He wasn't great. I liked him 2 games ago, and he was also really good. However, the playing time just isn't really there for him right now. He played 29 minutes last game. He's now been under 30 minutes in 4 consecutive games. So with that in mind, it's hard for me to really get up to Fournier with his price $6,400 on DraftKings, $6,700 on FanDuel. If I knew he was going to play 34, 35 minutes, I would love Evan Fournier. But when I consider that the minutes just haven't even gotten to 30, then I have to expect he's going to play 28, 29 minutes. If that's the case, it just really limits his upside with his price on the rise. So it's going to be no Evan Fournier for me unless something changes where I get information that I could expect him to play over 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get a little bit more than the field of Fournier, at least in the most recent crunch I had about, we have it projected for 8% ownership. And again, the ownership projections always come with the Awesemo Plus membership. So make sure to check out the packages at awesemo.com/join. But Fournier, to me, the one thing I have concern with is having Frank Mason in there is just a point guard who's more confident or competent rather, who could steal some minutes from Fournier. And maybe that's sort of what we saw yesterday with Mason playing the run that he had. Jordan Bone was not doing a lot. He's now off the team. So Fournier, to me, part of his value has been getting the assist rate up to around 27% with no Fultz out there and with no Gordon too. I think that Fournier's got a shot here, and I do think if Vooch sort of regresses a little bit to what we would normally expect, not the outlier day, I think Fournier picks a little more up. So I'll be there, but I get it. I think on DK, I think it's maybe a little more appealing. Let's keep going through the next game here. Toronto, 112.8 implied points. Going to Atlanta, 108.8 implied points. We saw a massive day from Pascal Siakam yesterday. Fred VanVleet, a little bit disappointing. Kyle Lowry seemed to pick up some of the slack, and that's sort of what you could expect for VanVleet after he had the outlier day. Overall, I think that Chris Boucher seems viable. Bain seems viable. Siakam looks okay, but really Siakam's the only one I'm getting in my early crunches, Greg. So Toronto side for you, does anybody jump out as being particularly worthwhile?
Not really. If I had to roster somebody, it would be Chris Boucher on Fanduel. The DraftKings price is really appealing at 4,400, but the playing time just isn't there really as of late. He played 27 minutes against the Nets, so maybe that's something that gives me a little bit of a positive outlook. But look at the games before that: 19 minutes, 18, 14, 13. It's so weird. Boucher was so good for them for so long. I understand that the 5-man lineups he was playing in with the starting lineup, it was not working at all. They were getting crushed on the court together. But I still feel like there has to be some way to get Chris Boucher on the court. At least that would be what I would do if I was in that situation. But there's a reason why I'm, just sitting here in my room talking to you in a pink chair as opposed to being out on the court, I guess. But I can't expect the minutes that Chris Boucher that I'd like him to get. And he played, like I said, he played 27 minutes yesterday. So if we don't get all the value that we think we might, that'll maybe drive me a little bit towards getting like 5 to 10% of Chris Boucher. But as it stands now, I'm not really getting to him. And I mean, if you told me Chris Boucher was going to be 4,400 on DraftKings 2 weeks ago, I think that was insane, right? He was a guy who was over 7,000 at that price point at that time. And then his playing time just disappeared. So it's hard for me to reliably say I think he plays big minutes.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things too with him where if there isn't a traditional center, he does see more minutes. And that was the case with Brooklyn where he got the minutes yesterday. But I mean, is Clint Capella somebody we'd consider a traditional center? Because I think that's the question I would have where, like he is a guy who does damage on the board. So maybe you want Baines in to hopefully box him out and have some shot at winning that matchup. But Boucher, I think athletically seems like a better match. So I don't know, this is sort of just nickel and diming it, Greg, but do you have any lean on that if we were to apply that logic there? Because I really don't know which way it would go. I can kind of see the logic to both sides.
Yeah, but then the other thing also becomes tough where the way the teams try to match up, where they go, hey, this team's big. Do we want to play big to try to play against them? Because Atlanta does have one of the bigger front courts in the league with John Collins and Clint Capella. Or do they say, hey, this team's big. We want to go small to try to counteract what they're doing and get different. And I always think that's a narrative that tells itself after the game is over. And it's really easy to say like, oh, look, they did this to play against this. But we don't really know what the outcome is going to be before the game. I'll say this. I think I'm a little more inclined to get to some Boucher than I was like 5 minutes ago, but still not somebody that I want to get to like a ton of regularity because I have zero confidence in his playing time.
Yeah, Awesemo has him at 22 minutes for me. That makes him project well. Wouldn't shock me if I got a little bit in there, but the field projected for about 5% on DraftKings. I think that feels about right here because you are taking on a good amount of risk. Just if the minutes aren't there, you are definitely screwed even at that price point for Boucher, especially with some of the value on this slate. The Atlanta side, I think maybe there feels like there should be something here, and there really isn't. A lot of these guys get a boost in rates without DeAndre Hunter in the mix. He's expected to be out again. So we have John Collins, who gets to about a 25% usage rate in that core time. Trae Young, closer to 34% usage, which is pretty much his last year numbers without Hunter, and I think Bogdan is what I ran it with. So these guys, I thought I would get a little bit of. Trae, I ended up with just 1% or 2% exposure to in my early crunches. Herter, not popping up for me. Collins, not popping up for me. Greg, anything you want here? Because this game feels like it should be appealing. I just don't think the prices are, at least on DraftKings, looking the most enticing overall.
All right. I mean, so we're about to get to a really annoying part of the show where we're just going to have to rattle off injuries where we don't know what to do with these situations because Trae Young is questionable to play and he missed last game. I have no clue if Trae Young's playing or not. If he's out, then it obviously totally changes the landscape of the Hawks. And I think the talking point has to become, what do we do with Rajon Rondo? Because he sucked last game. He didn't score at all against the Jazz. He ended up picking up some fantasy points in the fourth quarter when the game was kind of out of hand and the Jazz didn't really care anymore because they were up by so much in that game for the most part. The fourth quarter just didn't matter. But Rajon Rondo still on the whole is a very good points per minute fantasy producer. We've seen that over the last few years. So if he starts at point guard, it's going to be hard for me to ignore him because I think he would play more than he played last game. And the other thing also, that game is about as difficult a matchup as possible. The Jazz have a really good defense. It's not to say that the Raptors have a bad defense, but it's not as tough as the Utah Jazz. The Jazz have been smashing kind of everybody as of late. So I think that if Rondo starts at point guard again, I'm going to have to go back to him because he's going to project really well for me unless I just decide that I'm only going to give Rajon Rondo 24 minutes, which I don't think is an accurate representation of what his role is going to be. So without Trae Young, Rajon Rondo, I still think is somebody to get to. Kevin Huerter, more of a Fanduel specific play, he's 4,900. I think that he would be a really strong play without Trae Young. I'd have a little bit of interest in John Collins without Trae Young. We saw Collins last year when Trae Young was off the court. He had a handful of really big games, and he had a big game not last game without Trae Young. There was a game I'm trying to remember. Actually, it might have been last year, but yeah, there was a stretch last year where I think Trae Young had an ankle injury. That rings a bell, right? Trae Young,
where Cam Reddish went off. Is that what we're talking about?
Cam Reddish went off, but also John Collins had a stretch last year where Trae Young had an ankle injury, and Collins ended up being a guy who was priced over 8,000 and just had a bunch of really strong games. So I think that if Trae Young is out, we could see the offense run through John Collins a little bit more. But once again, we just don't know if Trae Young is playing or not because he's listed as questionable, and that's going to be the case with the next 6 games we talk about.
Yeah, the Rondo thing is weird. Now, I'm assuming that Trae is in. I feel like it was a calf contusion last game, so I feel like that's like a one-game injury. But Rondo in that game against Utah was weird because he wasn't playing like Rondo. He was playing like Lloyd Pierce was just in his ear being like, hey, don't do Rondo things, don't dominate possessions. Like he was bringing the ball up and then immediately swinging it out to Huerter, swinging it out to like whoever was there really, and is not even involved in like the actual play action, not involved in any sort of dribble handoffs, not involved in any pick and roll game. So it was a little bit odd. Kind of got loose in the second half when they were starting to trail Utah. Utah was pulling ahead. As Greg mentioned, looked good defensively, did limit everything Atlanta did. But I have some concern with how they're going to use Rondo overall. It just definitely didn't seem to me like he had the full reign that you want to see for Rondo, where he's such a brilliant playmaker. You kind of want him to have the freedom. And I'm not sure he does, but at 4,100 on DraftKings, I think you're right. If Trae does miss, like he's going to be in the mix, but I'm just not going to be super bullish on Rondo because I think I had almost 100% Rondo or very close. I actually might have had the full 100. And it just was a frustrating process to watch because he ended up getting there fantasy wise, but it wasn't pretty. And the first half in particular was just kind of disengaged in a way that's not the best overall. Any Clint Capella for you at all? I just feel like we have to ask because his price on DraftKings is still, to me, mostly untenable, but with the 27% rebound rate he has with no DeAndre Hunter out there, I feel like he could still spike an outlier day. I don't know when it's going to be, and I don't really want to be there guessing it, but how do you feel about Capella, if anything?
No, there's too many other center options on the slate. For FanDuel, he's easy to stay away from, even though the price has gone down to 8,000 now, just because of how you can get Vucevic for slightly more, or you go just cheap and you get Andre Drummond, or you get DeMarcus Cousins tonight. And then on DraftKings also, I think Vucevic is a preferred option. I think DeMarcus Cousins is a preferred option. So Clint Capella, to me, given the other options we have at center, it isn't really a strong play.
Also, people, Larry C in the chat asked how many likes before you would show off your pink chair. So I don't know if you have a mark here, Greg, feel free to give the people, set the bar for how many likes it would take to show off your tea chair. I assume that you do with all your stuffed animals.
Let me think. How many likes do I have to get to show off this chair? I mean, I could kind of tease it right now.
Very seductive little move showing off that chair.
Yeah, I got experience with that. So let's say 600 likes, and there's not even that much to do. I would just literally get up and show the chair. Like it's not like this is some great effort for me, but yeah, let's do 600 likes and you get to see the pink chair.
All right, we got 1,300 people watching right now, so smash that like button immediately if you want to see that pink chair and maybe Greg do a full Showgirls performance or a flash dance one where a bucket of water falls from the ceiling. Who knows? But start with 600 likes and get there. Everybody intrigued here apparently, and I'm going to ignore any spins on Nerd Ask Greg that come out of this one. I guess let's keep going.
I would say actually let's encourage them. Let's not try to ignore any of the spinoffs that come. But the other thing, I mean, what I'd like to happen if I was a little more prepared for this, I mean, we'd have a bucket of slime drop from the ceiling, right? The old Nickelodeon days.
Yeah, you got to nickify your things like they like to brand everything with. The pregame show of the Super Bowl going to be Nickelodeon too, so I know what I won't be watching. I'll be watching a live before lock show that I'll be on with Josh here, just talking about the showdown tomorrow. Let's keep going there. We got a bunch of games here, and again, guys, hit that like button if you want to see the pink chair and help us out. We got Milwaukee getting 119.8 implied points here. Cleveland 109.8. Yesterday, Andre Drummond was a play that people consider. I know Terry was bullish on the idea of him as a pivot to Vooch, even though Vooch was sort of the play that we agreed was the best one. Didn't quite get there, but Drummond at his price point on Draftkings, on Fanduel, still in the mix. Centers have been having some more success against Milwaukee this year, as we talked about yesterday on Live Before Lock. And something that intrigues me a little bit with Drummond, I don't know that I want the Fields Draftkings projected 26% ownership, but I do think Drummond's worthwhile on a slate where I think a lot of ownership is going to go to Cousins. I think more is going to go to Horford if we have the same situation as yesterday for the Thunder. Vooch as well, another top play. Drummond, I think, is an interesting pivot in this range. So let's start with Cleveland side. How do you feel about Drummond and anybody else here that you feel like might be worth putting into some lineups?
So let's start by discussing that FanDuel, because I do think there's a difference with him on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's 6,900 on FanDuel, and he's a better fantasy player on FanDuel and DraftKings because the defensive stats, he has more upside. So it's a dumb thing where I don't know how many minutes he's going to play. Like, I have zero confidence in his playing time, but I am totally confident he has upside. He's either going to be really good or he's going to really suck today. And there's not really too much of an in-between because his price is so cheap on FanDuel versus where we normally see him that if he is going to get to 30-plus minutes, which could happen. If you look at his last 4 games, he's played 24 minutes, 33, 22, and 30. There's no rhyme or reason to when the Cavs decide to give Jared Allen minutes versus when they decide to give Andre Drummond minutes. If Drummond's going to play 33 minutes again at 6,900, then he could very easily break the slate, but he's not any more likely to play 33 minutes than he is to play 20 minutes. It's totally random, right? They might as well be using a random number generator to figure out how many minutes they're playing the front court guys. So I don't know what to make of Andre Drummond's minutes, and there's no number I could project him for that's going to be accurate. It's just a guess. So the way I'm settling on is like, hey, I'm just going to have Andre Drummond like 20 to 25% of my lineups. And I'm not even going to bother with trying to think about the big man minutes for the Cavs because it's fruitless. I don't know what it's going to be. And there's no way to accurately project it because I don't even think they know what they're going to do going into the game. They're just like, here's what we feel like doing. Do you have a better feel for it than me, or do you think it's as high variance as I'm making out to be?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a results-based situation where it really does depend. If Cleveland's looking good out there, then we see more Drummond. I think they were competitive yesterday, in the same spot against Milwaukee. So he ended up getting 30 minutes, and Awesemo has him for 28. And I think as FanDuel's salary, his DraftKings salary too, under 8K now. Like, I think he's in play. I don't know that I'm going to be there again as heavy as with the field, but I think he's worth getting some exposure to, and at least, as a cover your ass kind of thing in case he does have that outlier day. But I agree. Like, I think there's some risk to it. And to me, like, Allen on paper seems like he should be the better matchup against Milwaukee because he's actually able to defend and hopefully, add some rim protection, all the things that you'd want to see against Milwaukee. And Drummond, I think, is really out there. If he runs hot in the beginning, if he runs good, I think he'll continue to play. And if he does poorly, then at least you'll know right away that Andre Drummond's day is over.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I think your point about Jared Allen is definitely taken on my point. I mean, I think Jared Allen's better than Andre Drummond anyway, but these two teams played against each other yesterday, and Jared Allen played 21 minutes and Andre Drummond played 30 minutes. So with that in mind, I can't even look at the matchup and say this is a Jared Allen game and it's not going to be Andre Drummond because they played yesterday and that wasn't the case. It doesn't mean it won't be Jared Allen today. I just think it's random. I think they go into it just like, here's what we feel like doing today. And sometimes it's Jared Allen's turn, sometimes it's Andre Drummond's turn. And so that's why I think that if you're playing cash games, I wouldn't prioritize Andre Drummond on FanDuel. I'd go to Marcus Cousins. But if you're in tournaments and you're playing multiple lineups, I wouldn't go all in on Drummond. But I think you're making a mistake if you don't get some exposure to him just because there is the potential there to break the slate. The question then just becomes, how likely do you think it is that he gets those minutes? And that's the percentage that I'd really want to roster him.
Other Cavs I'm curious about here because, for the most part, when you're playing Milwaukee, if you are going to hang in, and it's debatable whether Cleveland does hang in this game. We don't project blowouts, but only it's actually a 9-point spread favoring Milwaukee on the road, and only a 19% implied possibility or probability to win here for Cleveland based on the money line. So not great odds here for Cleveland to have a shot here. But I think if they do have a shot, to me, it comes down to guys like Colin Sexton, Taurean Prince hitting some more shots. I do think getting with the field or, maybe a little bit above it for me with Sexton at his current projected ownership looks appealing. Do you see any other Cavs having value here? Because we do know Sexton, regardless of what happens, he's going to play at least 35 minutes. Taurean Prince as well, projected for 31 minutes by Awesemo, has been around that range a lot. Even Garland, too, a high minutes guy for the most part, not quite as high as Sexton. Do you see any opportunity for these guys, or are they stayaways?
If I had to roster one of the other guys, it would be Sexton, but I don't necessarily think that anybody's going to be holding me at gunpoint and saying you have to roster some Colin Sexton or other Cavaliers guys today. I do agree that Sexton has the most upside of any of them, but his price has also gone up a little bit, and this is a really tough matchup. So he was priced, under 7,000 on both on Fanduel and then right at 7K on Draftkings for a little bit. Now he's over 7K or at 7K on both sites. He's 7,000 on Fanduel, so that becomes less appealing. Also, when you consider the matchup against the Bucks, and that I think there's a good chance that we have a bunch of value at the guard position. I don't know who those values are going to be yet, but so on FanDuel, for instance, the options could be, do I want to play Colin Sexton or do I want to play Hamidou Diallo for $1,000 cheap with everybody in Oklahoma City out? And if that's the case, Sexton just doesn't become somebody who's anywhere near a priority play. So it's going to depend a little bit on what the other guys are, but as of right now, he doesn't rate out very well for me.
Yeah, I think he's more, if I'm going to assume based on my ownership, I think I'm getting him as a pivot to the range where DeMar DeRozan's a guy that I expect I'll have a lot of. He's 7,200. So that to me is one way. I don't know if Sexton, you would consider him a pivot directly because they're not playing the same positions. But in terms of price points, if you are loading up on some of the other plays that are going to be chalkier, I think that's where Sexton maybe has some value here. And that's why I anticipate I'll probably have 10% of him, maybe a little bit more. The Milwaukee side, I think Giannis really the one buck I could see having some interest in. Middleton's going to be decently owned. I get it. But I think to me, Giannis, really the reason I get to Giannis is because there's value on today's slate that I can get there. Luka, I think, is going to pop up a bit as well. But Giannis to me looks strong, single-digit ownership for him. But Milwaukee side, Greg, anything you like here, given the fact that, it's very possible they could put it on Cleveland and maybe things don't get there in a blowout?
Yeah, if the game's competitive, Giannis is going to play big minutes. We've seen that as of late is when the Bucks play close games, even if it's a back-to-back. The last back-to-back the Bucks played, he played 39 minutes on both ends of it. And so I'm not too concerned that this is a back-to-back. The concern with me is more how close is this game and does Giannis get into foul trouble? Because last night he immediately got into foul trouble. I think he picked up two fouls 4 minutes into the game and then just didn't have to play a whole ton in the first half. But then he came back on the court in the second half and just crushed and kind of closed out the game in a big way to have a decent fantasy night for the Bucks. So on the high end, I definitely do like Giannis on this slate. He isn't my priority to pay up for. That is James Harden as of now, but Giannis is definitely somebody who's going to be in the mix for me.
Also, here's a chat here from Joshua saying the pink chair will hold you at gunpoint and force a Sexton play. I don't know what people are expecting from the pink chair, but I feel like now everybody has hit the like button because if this chair can hold people hostage like a Pee-wee's Playhouse run amok, I feel like this is what we need to see on this show more than ever.
Yeah, and this is what's great about doing the show with Spags. We have the dumbest bits that we could come up with, and for some reason, the audience just latches onto it. They need to see the pink chair. They need to see the money hat. We need I don't know what sound drop we're gonna have for Jordan to play when the pink chair comes out. But yeah, I mean these are the things that the programs are built around.
You got to find your fun and happiness somewhere. And I still I mentioned it now, the Zooey Deschanel lineup thing that we came up with in our SuperDraft show on Thursday was or Wednesday is one of my favorite things now because I just think a fun, quirky lineup. That's a classic Zooey Deschanel lineup. Either way, hit the like button now. If you want to see that pink chair and all the magic therein, please hit that like button or just to support the channel. So make sure that we get seen by more people. That's always the goal too. Next game up, San Antonio, 112.8 implied points going into a matchup against Houston, 111.8 implied points on their side. Middle of the pack combined total in this game, but still some opportunity for San Antonio's side in particular. LaMarcus Aldridge still out here. We also have DeMar DeRozan picking up not as much ownership as I would think he deserves. We saw him have a nice day the other day, his usage rates take a big jump because of no Aldridge. DeJounte Murray gets a bit of a boost. Keldon Johnson was a disappointment the other day, but I think he still looks solid. His usage goes up, also rebounds a little more effectively. Jakob Poeltl, the value's sort of been priced out of him, but I think he's still in the mix, even though Rudy Gay being back could maybe constrict his minutes a little bit if San Antonio does decide to go small, maybe as a counterpoint to DeMarcus Cousins. No Christian Wood on the Rocket side either. We can talk about that in a second, but Spurs side first, Greg, where do you land with DeMar DeRozan? Let's go there because I think he's one of my favorite plays on the slate on Draftkings, and I'm curious your thoughts on both Draftkings and Fanduel.
Yeah, and don't forget DeJounte Murray's hurt. He left last game early with an ankle injury. He's listed as questionable. It seems like there's a pretty good chance that he ends up not playing. I don't know that for sure, but I consider the questionable tag to be like a really legitimate 50-50 for him right now. Ever since he came back from the torn ACL last year, they've been really cautious with his health. They limited his minutes in back-to-backs when he came back last year. They limited his minutes in general for like half the season. So whenever any sort of injury pops up with DeJounte Murray, the Spurs don't really mess around with it. And we also seen that a little bit with Derek White this year, where they've been cautious with his playing time. And I think that Derek White, though, could finally get unleashed this game, especially if DeJounte Murray's out. Given where the Spurs are in the standings and that it's a condensed season, this is a really important game against the Rockets. Like there's real playoff implications here. It's lined at nearly a pick'em, and I think it's a game that both teams are going to really push their core guys to play as many minutes as possible. So DeMar DeRozan, if there is no DeJounte Murray, he's going to have to do almost everything for them. And I think that he would be one of the, if not my highest owned players on the slate. So DeMar DeRozan, definitely someone I'm going to be honing in on. I feel like I'm going to like Derek White if DeJounte Murray's out, as long as he starts. If not, then it's whoever else starts. Maybe they go to Patty Mills. Maybe Devin Vassell makes his way into the starting lineup. I'm not totally sure what they would do there. If DeJounte Murray's in, I'm not going to have interest in him. I think there's too much risk with him coming back from that injury that made him miss a lot of the second half of last game. So DeMar DeRozan is going to be the priority play for me. And then if DeJounte Murray's out, then I'm going to be looking at whatever guard starts in his place as value.
Yeah, DeJounte Murray, I think one important play to watch here for the reasons that Greg mentioned. Derek White played 25 minutes in that last game. So let's say he did start. I think if you could pencil him in for 28 minutes or so, I think he's going to pop up in a lot of lineups. Maybe, I don't know if he'll get chalky at his DraftKings price point, but there's certainly some opportunity there. But to me, DeRozan is one guy that if Murray's in, I'm okay with him. If Murray's out, I think he's going to become an even better play. Same thing with Keldon Johnson, where I'm anticipating having a lot of these guys. And if for some reason we don't know Murray's status before lock, or if it's still like a game time decision type thing, I think I'm still comfortable being heavy on DeRozan, heavy on Johnson, because those guys get opened up enough by the lack of Aldridge that if they also lose Murray, like I think those guys would be complete smash plays and maybe a little undervalued, because the ownership right now, like I'm really surprised that DeRozan would be under 15% on DraftKings.
And also, if you look at the start times for the games, this is another reason why we don't have a whole lot of injury news right now. The Magic Bulls game starts at 7, and there's not another game that tips off until 8 Eastern time. So we don't really have early games on this slate. I'm actually kind of surprised they even included the 7 p.m. game. And circling back on something before I didn't think of until now. So we brought up like Denzel Valentine as a potential value play. Here's the issue I have with getting to a lot of Denzel Valentine. There's a chance we're not going to get a lot of the other injury news until after the first game starts. And I don't want to use up one of my spots on Denzel Valentine and be like, oh, cool, I got 25 fantasy points out of Denzel Valentine. And he played 24 minutes. And then all of a sudden we get to other games later. It's like DeJounte Murray's out. All the OKC guys are out. And there's just a ton of value anywhere. And I've already burned a lot of roster space on Denzel Valentine. So a little out of order there, but it's just something I hadn't thought of earlier that I thought was worth bringing up, looking up the start times.
No, I think that's something we saw, I think it was yesterday too with the Clippers, where Paul George got ruled out. And because of that, like I didn't have the flexibility to get to Kawhi. And Adam had mentioned on I think on the deeper dive yesterday, the idea of having Kawhi in there and that he's going to be fine either way, but it gets a lot better if George is out. I kind of was hoping that George would end up in. So I think I just let that guide my process more, but something to keep in mind for these slates. And yeah, I think you're right that maybe might be wise for me to downgrade my Denzel Valentine, though. If it goes the other way, you could easily see Denzel Valentine be under-owned relative to what he might be normally because of people waiting things out. So always something to consider. But I think you're a little more correct here on this side, especially on a Saturday night, the day before the Super Bowl. Like I think we're dealing potentially with people paying less attention than they should and not pivoting last minute if we do have like Derek White picking up a start.
Yeah, and then also I think we have to consider in the context of slate, number one, there's 9 games. And there are a ton of players on the injury report. So my confidence level that players are going to get ruled out is pretty high. I mean, we're about to talking about the Rockets side of the game. The Rockets have John Wall and David Nwaba both listed as questionable. We talked about a whole bunch of other guys already that listed as questionable. all these guys aren't going to play. I don't know which ones are going to start and which ones are going to sit, but I think we could pretty confidently say at least a handful of them won't play.
And Alex is in the chat too, saying that he thinks that White will start because he started alongside Murray a lot. So he thinks either way, I think that White may start because of having no Walker. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing from Alex in the chat there. And of course, Alex is always paying attention here. And that's why the data that we have at Awesemo is so good at what you need out of everything here to build better NBA DFS lineups. So check out all of our packages at awesemo.com/join. The Houston side, big injury for them. Christian Wood, it's kind of a sad one where I'm glad he got paid. So I guess, it's all relative to that, where he had the ankle injury, then wanted to shoot his free throws. And his teammates basically had to drag him off the floor last game because the guy didn't want to come out, wanted to shoot his free throws so he'd be eligible to come back. Now he's going to miss extended time, potentially, who knows how long. And the end result here, DeMarcus Cousins, whose price is not down as cheap as it was the last time we had no Christian Wood, but still, to me, cheap enough to get there on Draftkings by a good amount. I think the field, to me, looks a little heavy right now, over 50% ownership for him. I think the pivot, if we do have Al Horford, is right there for you. So that's one that I think I'll have a little bit more of, but we'll see how that OKC news comes out later today. But Cousins, really the one to talk about here, Greg. How do you feel about his prospects, given the fact that he's been a monster every time that Christian Wood's been out?
Spags, I don't like DeMarcus Cousins. I love DeMarcus Cousins, but it's also, look at what we've gotten from so far this year. He's nowhere near what he was a few years ago, but he's still, when he's on the court, he's a really good fantasy producer, and his price has come down at a rate on Fanduel and Draftkings that it's when we saw Christian Wood first come back before DeMarcus Cousins, I think he was priced up to like 7,800 or something like that on both sides, somewhere around that neighborhood. His price has come back down to where he's a mid-tier price. And look at the starts we've gotten out of him so far this year. 44 fantasy points, 34, 52, and 52. And in games, as long as he stayed out of foul trouble, he's playing 30 plus minutes. DeMarcus Cousins isn't really that much less of a fantasy producer than he was as a peak player. He's still really involved in everything. He's a high usage guy. Rebounds are there. He could make plays. They run the offense to him. So the assists are there. The defensive stats are there. Really what the biggest drop off of from him before the Achilles injury is that he's just a stone on defense and everybody just runs around him. But as long as he's on the court, he's going to produce fantasy points. And given what his price is, he is my favorite center play on both FanDuel and DraftKings. He's a higher priority play for me than Nikola Vucevic. He's a higher priority play for me than Andre Drummond. And those are really the three guys, at least on FanDuel, that I think everybody's going to be considering between in terms of who they want to play in cash. To me, I say go with DeMarcus Cousins.
So I'm a little, and I think this is going to come down to the Horford thing for me, where he's a guy that I've been big on all year. And I feel like that's sort of drive me more there, because I think if I get a third of my lineups with Cousins, like I don't think I'm losing a lot. Whereas if I get a third of my lineups with Cousins, then let's say, I don't know how much it's going to be, but half my lineups with Horford and the other half with Vooch, like I feel like I'm getting a good mix of all these different constructions, and that's sort of where I am. But I do agree with you. Cousins to me on paper is just a really good spot. I just want to get a little bit less ownership if I can there. And I think projection wise, these guys are going to be close enough for me that Cousins might get sorted out a bit more. But this spot going against San Antonio, who does play pretty slow and also is bad at defense, like this on paper to me seems like an ideal spot for Cousins to have that day. Really the only concern I would have is that this is a game we're going to have Wall and Oladipo, and maybe that sort of constricts the usage.
Wall's questionable.
Is he? Okay, so, well, Alex has him in right now, so that's what I'm looking at. But yeah, if one of them is out, I think that certainly would make it better.
Yeah, Wall has a back injury. He's questionable to play. They've been alternating John Wall and Oladipo being in or out recently. That was also because of a back-to-back situation. But yeah, this is another game where we have a key players listed as questionable, and it's kind of hard to know for sure who my favorite plays are going to be because John Wall being questionable has so much weight on this game because he's such a high usage guy and dominates the ball so much when he's on the court. But yeah, if he's out, we're going to have to see DeMarcus Cousins do more. Victor Oladipo would be in line for a role boost. Eric Gordon would have to play bigger minutes, and he's played some point guard for them recently. So all of those guys would be in a bigger spot, and it's another one where we just need to find out what the injury news is. The good thing is we're going to get an injury report drop in 1 minute. The NBA updates the latest injury report, and I have a feeling we're just going to get flooded with news, and it's just going to be chaos.
And it's going to render everything that we talked about moot. So that's the joy of doing a deeper dive. And that's also the joy of us being able to hop off and yield the floor to E. McIntyre. He'll take you through all the news in that last hour, as well as the extra half hour for the Super Draft Lock, the Super Draft Show. Yeah, I guess that's the main thing here. And the other main thing, make sure you hit that like button here. Get us that 600 likes. We got about 1,800 people watching right now. And we have a promise of seeing Greg's pink chair, which is not a euphemism. It is an actual chair. If you guys hit 600 600 like button.
It could be whatever you want it to be.
It's Saturday here. We like to get loose on the Saturdays, but smash the like button either way for really any show you watch in Awesemo, but especially for us, we're trying to do silly things to get you guys to hit the like button. So just do it. I think reward our ingenuity here, our ingenuity. And it is money time, I guess. Wait, no, we don't do money time.
Yeah, it's just like said, it's not even halfway through the show because we started 15 minutes early, just like setting the sound effects. You can do, we'll make a deal, Jordan. When we get, how many likes are we at right now, Spags?
We are at just shy of 400.
All right. Well, it looks like we might come short of the pink chair promise. But if we do get there, and I'm not like Spags, I'm not some sellout where it's like, oh, you guys tried, I'll just give you what I promised you anyway. If we get to the likes number, Jordan, you could play the money drop while we do the chair reveal.
Well, like on the deeper dive, I usually flip my hat for the last game because I feel like I have to give the people what they want, but also like it feels like odd to do it other ways. Oh, Durant out. Okay, so this is one important news item, which I guess we're getting just in time, or no, we're not. This game is one away for us right now, but Brooklyn, no Kevin Durant today. The health protocols, after he railed against them on Twitter, called out pretty much everybody in the NBA for the situation yesterday. He will be out, so that's one we will talk about coming up in a second here. But a game that I guess we don't know the full extent of what's going to be happening yet because of the injury reports. Hopefully we'll know in a short bit here. Minnesota.
We just got news.
Okay.
So SGA is going to play. By the way, to make it even more confusing, Darius Bazley downgraded to questionable.
Okay.
But yeah, SGA is going to play. Bazley now questionable, and that is what we know for now.
All right. So let me just see here.
Al Horford's out. That was that.
Okay. So yeah, so to me now Cousins will be much more appealing. He is out for rest. Ty Jerome still out in the G League. Pokashevsky still out in the G League. Roby also questionable.
Dude, this is such a mess. I knew this was going to be stupid at 5:30, and I was trying to time it exactly at 5:30 where we would get to around this game because I didn't want to talk about this game without getting the injury report first. And it didn't help at all. Like the injury report did not give us any clarity. I was hoping at least like these are the guys I like from the Thunder. And then instead it's like, well, now SGA's in, but Bazley's questionable, Roby's questionable, Horford's out. So it's really it's not any clearer. Hopefully by the time the live before lock guys come on, they'll really know who's actually playing for the Thunder because it's the most important spot on the slate other than the Nets. But it's such a mess right now.
Yeah, let me see. I'm just gonna do a swap here of Shea's minutes with Horford's minutes, so I get a slightly better read of what I'm thinking about this side of the equation. I might have to adjust some rates too, because this is going to really affect everything for OKC. Because having Shea out there sort of mutes the assist upside we saw from Hamidou Diallo. He had double-digit assists yesterday. He's a guy that's interesting because he'll rebound at a higher rate when he doesn't have to be lead ball handler, but then when he has to be lead ball handler, he kind of yields the rebounding, gets more assists. The Diallo part of things, I guess, let's talk Isaiah Roby, because I think he's one part that doesn't change too much now. No Horford.
It is because he's questionable.
Oh yeah, but so if he's out, then okay. Let's
we still don't know because Bazley's questionable.
So no Horford. That's the main thing that we do know. Yes, Shea. Roby questionable. So let's talk if Roby is in. If Roby is in, he's the best value play on the slate, I would think, at least based on what we know right now. I assume that he would start because we have Muscala in the mix also. And the other thing also, we don't know that I'm assuming that SGA is in because he's not on the injury report. They haven't said that he's in or out, except considering they didn't release an injury report for 1:30 and now 5:30 was the first opportunity to put out an injury report and they didn't list SGA. That to me signifies he's in. So that is the assumption I'm currently working with. And then I don't know what to make of Maladon either. He's probably in too because he's not on the injury list either for health protocols, and that was his issue. So he must have tested negative, I think, and had an inconclusive yesterday would be my guess.
This is so stupid.
Also Dort's not on the injury report either.
So Dort, I would assume that he plays then also.
So that means, so right now I think this would mean that for me, Diallo is pretty much done. Kenrich Williams also pretty much and by done, I mean not going to pop up a lot for me. Diallo, no. I think Diallo probably going to be out of the mix for me. Unless Bazley is out too. So we really can't, it's hard to break this down right now. Everybody gets less appealing though, I think is the main thing.
Yeah, and so I just opened up the official injury report from the NBA website instead of just reading what people are saying on Twitter, so it makes it a little clearer. Darius Bazley is listed as questionable. Isaiah Roby's listed as questionable. Al Horford's listed as out. George Hill's listed as out. Anybody who's not on the injury report, I'm under the assumption they're playing. So if that's the case, that means SGA is playing. It means Maladon is playing, and it means that Lou Dort is playing.
Yeah, so Alex just did a projections update too, so I'm going to grab the minutes and see what he thinks about this spot, because this is one that, we wanted to get as right as we can. Obviously, the live before lock guys will have a better read on it because they will hopefully get all the news about, which guys that are questionable are actually going to be in. It's going to be an important thing here, so make sure to stay tuned with Emac and Terry. All right, I got the minutes. Let's see what Alex did, because I'm now very curious. So Isaiah Roby, I think he's going to put in for now that Roby is playing in lieu of Horford, or in Horford's stead. And that gives him 26 minutes. And to me, that puts Roby at about 25 fantasy points. So Roby to me would look good, assuming that he gets in. Alex also currently still has Bazley in. So I guess he's hoping that he makes it in. 31 minutes projected for Bazley. Shea gets 34 minutes. So Alex is expecting him to get the full run of minutes there. Dort and Maladon is given 32. So I think Dort and Maladon wouldn't be in play for me, but Shea kind of looks in play, which was never a spot I want to be at.
7,400 for SGA, I think, is a crazy price on DraftKings. I wasn't really sure. Obviously earlier I had no clue if he was going to play, so I didn't build lineups with him in. But 8,100 on Fanduel, I think that is an okay price. The thing is, though, with Fanduel is that it looks like James Harden's just going to become the priority at shooting guard now. I think that's going to be fairly obvious. So that's going to make SGA not somebody I'll get to as much, although he's going to be in my player pool. But on DraftKings, it's 7,400 with some of those other guys out. And also SGA, also don't forget, number one, a little bit of a shortened rotation. And then number two, also he didn't play yesterday. So he's going to be well rested as compared to some of the other guys. So 7,400 for SGA, that's going to make him a really good play for me on DK.
All right, on the other side for Minnesota, we still have D'Angelo Russell is doubtful, so the assumption is that he's going to be out. That has not changed with the latest injury report. Jarrett Culver out for them. Naz Reid probable. Juancho Hernan-Gomez questionable. And Karl-Anthony Towns still out for Minnesota. As a result, so I've already adjusted the Minnesota side of this equation. And to me, Ricky Rubio, I think, is probably in play. Anthony Edwards, a 30% usage rate in court time with no Russell, with no Towns. I think he's also in play. Jordan McLaughlin, at a minimum salary price, I think also kind of interesting. We've seen him be very productive. He's actually projected for a good amount of ownership as well. But in terms of value, I would rank him above Frank Mason, a guy we talked about earlier, but not somebody that I would consider a priority. I think I'll get a good amount here, probably not more than the field. But Minnesota, Greg, what are the priorities for you with the assumption that Russell will not play?
Yeah, so like you said, Russell doubtful, and then also Juancho potentially coming back. He's working his way back from health protocols. Malik Beasley is going to be the priority play for me. Ricky Rubio, I would have said earlier in the day, without D'Angelo Russell, I'd be interested in Ricky Rubio. But now it looks like we're having so much value that's going to open up elsewhere that I'm not going to have a real strong need to get to Rubio. Malik Beasley, particularly on FanDuel, I think is going to be the guy that I have the most interest in. And then overall, just trying to save time, I'm not going to mention too many otother players because I'm not going to be getting to them. There's a lot of really good plays on the slate that are starting to open up.
All right, let's keep going here. And now we're on to the other game here. It's greatly affected, but I think I have a better read now because of Awesemo's minutes projections. Brooklyn in a spot against Philadelphia, 236.5 combined total. Brooklyn's got a 116.3 implied total on their side. Philadelphia 120.3, though these could come down a little bit with the news that we'll not have Kevin Durant today. One thing that jumped out, and it's a very small sample size, also no Kyrie Irving for Brooklyn, so it just changed the equation. But one thing that I thought was interesting was that Harden, I think it's a sub 100 minute sample, so not the best, but has had still under a 30% usage rate in court time without Durant and without Kyrie. He's still assisting at a higher level, just shy of 50% assist rate for him. But I think he's going to shoot more. I have projected really well now, so I think he's going to be unavoidable. But do you think that it doesn't seem like he's full Houston James Harden anymore, where he's just going to gobble up every single possession. It does seem like they want to run a real offense. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think if they do run it like a real offense, you have more opportunity for Joe Harris. You have more opportunity for Jeff Green. You have more for Bruce Brown. Like if Harden puts up the 40%, 50% usage rate he used to put up in Houston in games without Westbrook, it doesn't quite get there. But if he's still focused on assisting, setting up guys, I think you have a lot of guys in play for Brooklyn. But give me your thoughts, Greg. And I guess started with Harden here. And what are your thoughts, I guess, on this situation where no Durant, no Irving, and not a lot of sample size to look at?
Yeah, I don't really think there's all that much to think about. Play James Harden. Play him in cash games for sure. I'm going to be overweight to the field on the GPPs. He's a priority guy to play up for. With no Kyrie Irving and without Kevin Durant, there's a couple things to consider here. Number one, I have to expect he's going to have a massive usage rate. The other thing also is think about the matchup. They're playing against the Philadelphia 76ers. These are two teams in the same division. They're both near the top of the Eastern Conference. This is a game that in a shortened season is fairly important for the Nets to win. So I think we're going to see a massive workload for James Harden, not just in terms of usage, but I think his minutes are also going to be really substantial. A third point is that Joel Embiid is questionable to play. If Embiid's out, this is not nearly as difficult a defensive matchup as it would have been otherwise. We've seen this team struggle on defense with Joel Embiid off the court this year. So without him in there, I think that James Harden would also have an easier time. That's another news item that we're going to need an update on. But I also agree with you. I think that Joe Harris is going to be a viable value option. Jeff Green is somebody I want to get exposure to. Bruce Brown as well. He's had some good games when he started for a cheap price. I assume that Bruce Brown is going to start now. I haven't seen any updates on Twitter to see if the Nets have named what a starting lineup is, but it's definitely going to be the number one priority play is James Harden, and then those other three guys for me also Joe Harris, Jeff Green, and Bruce Brown I want to get to. DeAndre Jordan, I think will probably end up projecting decently well for me, but not a priority play at center considering how many other strong options we have at center. So I doubt that DeAndre Jordan will make it into my player pool.
Yeah, and the small sample size these guys had that I referenced earlier, Bruce Brown had about a 19% usage rate, Joe Harris a little bit above 20. So I'm giving these guys in that range. I just feel like to me that seems the most likely outcome here. Even if Harden does start to shoot a little bit more, I think these guys are going to get enough looks. So to me, Bruce Brown becomes very appealing. Joe Harris, I think the price point for him kind of stinks, but wouldn't surprise me if he has enough upside to be worthwhile. So for him, he looks like a solid play. Jordan, I think will come up for me a little bit more with the projection that I have on him. Only 4,300 on DK too. And now for me, Al Horford was a guy that was going to be important to me. So Isaiah Roby will potentially be important if he's in, but not quite as important as Horford was in terms of my lineup build. And I think Roby's also dual position eligible. So yeah, that's part of why too, for me, I think it's going to open up Jordan a little bit more, but I'm with you. Harden, I think is a priority play here. And one, what's the ownership level? Obviously this is off the top of your head, Greg. So we don't know what the actual crunches look like, but Harden for me, I think may get close to being 100% play, but I'm thinking I'll be heavily above 50% at least.
Oh, I thought you were skeptical on him before, which by the way,
no, now that I'm running the numbers now, I feel good about it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. By the way, I think both of us kind of talk about a lot of these players the same way, where if one of us likes them, we'll kind of offer the devil's advocate more and just be like, well, let's consider this because it kind of sparks discussion. But yeah, I'm going to be super, super heavy on James Harden tonight.
Yeah, it seems like a very good spot. And I just think knowing the way that I sort things, I'm pretty sure with the projection that I have on Harden, he's going to pop up in a lot of my top projected and even lesser owned lineups. So it's something to watch there. Philadelphia side, you mentioned it, Joel Embiid, questionable right now. I have him in. I think he looks like a decent play. The one value-ish play, though, that I don't mind taking, and he's been sort of weird. I guess he had an illness the other day, so he didn't end up starting the second half. But Seth Curry, to me, price-wise, looks kind of appealing. But I think you can make a case for a lot of these guys that the raw projection doesn't look fantastic for Embiid, for Simmons, for Harris either. But going against Brooklyn, even a depleted Brooklyn team that won't score as much, the defense is still going to be pretty awful. And I think there's a lot of ways for these guys to have nice days. So if there were any priorities for you on the Philadelphia side, Greg, who would it be?
Right now, it's nobody, and that's assuming that Joel Embiid and Seth Curry both play. If they're in, I'm not going to really roster anybody from the Sixers. There's going to be just better value plays, better priorities elsewhere. If I'm spending up my salary, it's going to go to somebody like Luka or James Harden as opposed to Joel Embiid. Like I've said, also, there's so many good center plays on the slate that I think the opportunity cost is kind of steep in rostering Joel Embiid. Where it starts to get interesting is if Seth Curry's out, what do they do with the starting lineup? Shake Milton could potentially become a strong play if he moves into the starting lineup. If Joel Embiid's out, what do they do with the starting lineup? Do they start Tony Bradley again? Do they go to Dwight Howard? I feel like there's still a lot of variables in this situation. It's another one where I think we just have to say, let's see what the news brings us, because I don't know what to make of the 76ers right now. Tobias Harris would have to play a pretty substantial role in the offense. If Joel Embiid is ruled out, he's 7,600 on DraftKings, and then on Fanduel, he is at 7,900. So not necessarily a great value price, but it's still a spot that I'd want to get to at least a little bit if Joel Embiid is out. Like I said, if he's in and if Seth Curry's in, then most likely I'm not going to get exposure to anybody on Philly.
Yeah, I think that seems reasonable to me, and one to watch this one a little bit more closely for news too, because the Embiid one would definitely be a big one, and one that we probably don't need right now. And also, people in the chat saying there's no way that Brooklyn keeps this close. This is a Philadelphia team, granted without Ben Simmons, but did just lose and actually get blown out by Portland the other day without Damian Lillard, and without CJ McCollum still as well, and without Nurkic. So Philadelphia does sometimes slum it, as our usual deeper dive host Lofty will tell you. They do find ways to sometimes slum it against competition, and that's just the NBA too. It's still only a 4-point spread here. Obviously, there would still be a logical assumption. This line was made knowing that Kyrie was out, knowing that Durant might not play. So I think to me, the assumption here is that Brooklyn has a shot to keep it close. And if they do, it'll probably be those guys that we mentioned, the Harden, the Joe Harris, the Bruce Brown to a lesser extent. Like those are the guys who will keep it close if it does stay close. Next game up, and guys, smash the like button here so maybe we can get the pink chair in amidst these last three games we have to hit on. Golden State, Dallas. Golden State 113.8 implied points. Dallas a 4-point favorite, 117.8 implied points. On the Golden State side, Draymond's been a monster lately, picking up some more minutes at the 5 and just looking more productive without James Wiseman. Kevon Looney also still out. There's room for him to get production here. Juan Toscano-Anderson, to me, not a value play that I want to get to anymore. His price is up enough where I don't see it happening for me. Oubre coming off of a monster day. Andrew Wiggins, I think, due for a bounce back day where Oubre is just not going to be that amazing every night out. Wiggins still has the usage, still has the opportunity. These guys are in play for me. And Steph, you always have too, though. I don't really see myself getting a lot of Steph tonight, Greg, but how do you feel about the Golden State side?
It's funny because these teams just played each other, and I think there was a total of like 263 or 273 points scored. It was a ridiculous amount of offense. There was 76 to 74 at halftime. Neither of these teams could stop each other, and then the Mavericks just stopped hitting three-pointers in the second half and then ended up getting blown out. But I think we have to expect this is going to be a really high-scoring game. But with that said, Kelly Oubre has been really priced up. Draymond's been really priced up. And I thought I was going to get to a lot of Draymond, but now as I'm just thinking through what my lineups are going to look like with some of the OKC value that might have opened up. So on FanDuel, for instance, if Isaiah Roby ends up starting for Al Horford and he's in, I'm going to get to a bunch of Isaiah Roby on FanDuel at his price point. And that's going to mean I don't get to a whole lot of Draymond Green at 6,700 with the price up. Draymond, to me, was a really high priority play last slate when he was priced below 6,000 on both FanDuel and Draftkings. Now we've seen the salary up. I'm not going to say that he's not in play, but he's going to be like a 3 or 4% player for me. He's not somebody who I'm going to get with just forcing into my lineups a ton like I did a couple days ago.
Yeah, I think all the Warriors guys fit that criteria for me. Wiggins as well is a guy that's normally pops up a little bit more for me. And Draymond, I've pretty much been playing every slate for the last couple of weeks because he's been priced a little bit too cheap, and now he's starting to show it with some of the bodies missing. But I agree with his price on FanDuel especially. I think it would be tough to get there, but on DraftKings too, 6K flat. Like he projects okay enough. Like I don't mind getting there, but the field's going to be about 3% on him. Like if I get there, it's fine. If I don't get there, I probably won't sweat it too much either. Dallas aside, ended up being kind of a disappointment for Dallas. They got rocked really the last time they played Golden State. This spot for Luka, though, I think still seems like a decent one. I think he's going to be a play that I'll have a good amount of here, especially with the value that we have going around. Porzingis in the mix for me, but with where his price is on DraftKings, I don't think that viable. I might rather go to Josh Richardson. Don't think I want to chase the Jalen Brunson games either, but Luka to me would be the priority on Dallas. Greg, how about for you?
Yeah, so I think that the way that we have to talk about Luka Doncic is within the context of some of the other guys we want to pay up for. And then I think we kind of have to compare them and rank them in a sense to say what order do we have these guys in terms of priority. I think both of us are going to agree at this point. James Harden's number one, right? Like Harden's well above Luka.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Luka's 2 right now, and Giannis is 3. And to me, those are the 3 guys that I want to build around in terms of my expensive options. And then I think that's going to make some of the other expensive players just not players I'm really going to get to, like Anthony Davis, LeBron James. We talked about Steph Curry there for a second. It's a good spot for him. I'm not going to have 0% of Steph Curry, but I'm not going to have a significant amount. And I've been light on Steph Curry a ton recently, and I've been waiting for it to kill me. It hasn't yet. It's going to kill me one of these times. It looked like it was going to last slate because he scored over 30 fantasy points in the first half. And then the Mavericks sucked so bad in the second half that Curry only had to play like 5 second half minutes or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the number was, except he didn't play at all in the fourth quarter and didn't play a whole ton in the third quarter either. So eventually it's going to come back to hurt me, but these slates keep happening where somehow Steph Curry's in a good spot, but just other guys are in better spots. And that's what it's going to be again today. I'd rather get to Luka. I'd rather get to James Harden. I'd rather get to Giannis. And there's going to be enough value on the slate where I don't feel like I have to save the $1,000 salary by going to Steph Curry.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that too. I would rather find the money to get to Harden. I also think, honestly, I could see having lineups with 2 studs today just because of the value out there, especially because I think I'm going to be more of a believer in Denzel Valentine, assuming that Awesemo keeps his minutes where they are. So to me, I don't mind the idea of if you're trying to get to the 2-stud build, that maybe you get to Steph there instead of, going to Luka or going to Giannis. But to me, Steph 10% owned, like, cool. That's probably where he should be. If I get a little bit less than that, if I get a little bit more than that, I think just being around that range seems like the move. Any Porzingis love for you, because he's been good recently, but I mentioned him briefly, but on DraftKings, I feel like his salary now, the upside's kind of been priced out given the fact that Luka still dominates the ball, and Josh Richardson's starting to shoot a little bit more too, which I think, doesn't hurt these guys really, but does kind of cramp the ceiling a little bit for Porzingis.
7,800 on FanDuel. That's something that's a little more appealing than his DK price for a couple reasons. Number one, obviously it's cheaper. Number two, also, he's a better FanDuel fantasy producer, more upside there because of the defensive stat numbers. So Porzingis, who has not been good on defense so far this year, but still somebody who's capable of blocking shots, I think his FanDuel price at 7,800, that's something I'm going to be getting to. But really, this is a team that's going to be Luka for me on the high end, and then some exposure to Porzingis as well. The other value guys just aren't going to be guys I'm getting to because there's so much value elsewhere.
All right, we're in the home stretch, guys. We need about 50 likes to get this this beautiful pink chair in the mix. So we help indulge our silly bits here and hit that like button, get us to 600 likes, and then stay tuned. Coming up, we got Emac and Terry for the actual live before lock show. They'll give you all the final news, any changes, any really ownership projections, all the data you're going to need to know. They're going to be talking about all of it, and then they also have a half-hour SuperDraft show. Play over at SuperDraft. You get into some downtime right now. Use the promo code Awesemo21 on SuperDraft.io, or when you download SuperDraft in the App Store, because that'll give you a deposit match up to $50, and that's money you can play right away at SuperDraft. They've had a lot of overlay recently, so it's just smart. This is an ad, obviously, but we care about you guys as players and your profitability and all that stuff. And playing on SuperDraft is going to help that out immensely right now, especially as they get more cash infusion from their various partnerships going. Let's talk about this next game. Memphis, New Orleans, 112.8 for Memphis, 113.8 for New Orleans. And Greg, I do not see a single play in this game that I care about, but Memphis still no Jonas Valanciunas due to health protocols, no Jaren Jackson as well.
Correction. Valanciunas is playing tonight.
Oh, great. Cool. Well, that's fun. So even better then, I presume then maybe Valanciunas could be in the mix for me. He was not in the most recent run of minutes that I pulled, so that's why I thought he was out still. But if he's in, these guys are priced for life without Jonas, so I don't see getting to Brandon Clark. I don't really see getting to Ja. I think the one guy you can make a case to get to is probably Jonas Valanciunas himself. But how do you feel about Memphis then with that concept here? And I'll see if I get some Jonas minutes in.
Yeah. So also no fault on Spags. We had a new injury report come out while we were in the middle of the show. So Valanciunas not listed on the injury report. That's what leads me to believe that he is going to be in. Somebody else you mentioned, Brandon Clark. He is now questionable on the injury report. He is dealing with calf soreness. That's why I'm happy. Very exciting that we get that 5:30 injury report that comes out in the middle of the show. We could just, it's like a surprise to you. We get to new games. It's like, guess who's hurt now? And I could reveal it to you on the air. So with Valanciunas in, I'm a little dubious that he's going to play his full minutes. It's been so long since Valanciunas has played. Let me go through his box score right now. When do you think is the last time Valanciunas has played in an NBA game?
It's got to be like January. Oh, because Memphis also had that stretch where they didn't play for like 2 weeks. So it's got to be like the 15th or something.
Yeah, January 16th is the last time Valanciunas played. So it has been almost a full month since Valanciunas has played. I can't expect he's going to play his regular run after that kind of time off. So the impact is going to be he plays some minutes. It's going to be enough minutes where he takes away from other guys, both in terms of usage and playing time, but also at a clip where it's going to make it so that he himself is not relevant. Where I think this gets a little interesting is what happens if Valanciunas is limited, which is what I expect, and Brandon Clark is ruled out. Then maybe somebody else comes into play, but actually probably not, because then maybe Tillman starts and he's already priced up from Valanciunas being out. So I don't really foresee a situation where there's going to be a value play on Memphis, even if Brandon Clark is out, just because we have Valanciunas back in the mix.
Yeah, Valanciunas still not in Osmo's minutes projection, but still, I think that's one to watch here because that's so I don't feel that bad. If Awesemo didn't get him in, then I missed it. Then we're all okay here. It'll be sorted out over the next hour. But yeah, Jonas, I think if you put him in for 25 at his price point, like you really didn't drop too much during this time away. So yeah, Jonas to me doesn't look too much appealing rather, and the rest of these guys going to get less appealing too. And guys like Xavier Tillman, who maybe would have been in the mix, I think entirely out of the mix. So for me, not much there. The New Orleans side, I could see maybe getting to Steven Adams, maybe getting to Lonzo, but with the centers we've talked about, Adams to me still seems like a very low priority. Lonzo also not that cheap, so not a priority for me either. Anything for you on New Orleans?
No, there's been recent slates where I've gotten to Zion and Brandon Ingram, but that was when both of them were priced under 8,000. There were some slates where Ingram was in the high 7,000s on Fanduel. There were slates where Zion was as cheap as 7,400 on Draftkings. And those were salaries I wanted to get to those guys. But now that they're both over 8,000, it's just a fair to slightly too high price on a slate with a whole bunch of value. There's better points per dollar plays. So I don't really see anything on New Orleans that I'm going to be getting to at all.
All right, so our last game here. Now we have Emac and Terry coming up to take you guys through the home stretch and do the extra half-hour Super Draft show. And also, we are over 600 likes, Greg. So first thing, last game on the Deeper Dive is money time. And now, Greg, you have to show the chair before we do our final game. So give the people a little taste of old Pinky.
So I have a plan for how we're going to finish the show. I'm going to do a walk-off, and it's just going to be the frame of just the chair there. That's how we're going to do it. Right, I've been thinking about this the entire show.
Also, your nerd ass Greg, you have a pink chair. Seems like a real Pinky in the Brain scenario, huh?
No, that is not what it is. I'm not going to yes and you. I'm just going. No, we're killing that. And I mean, maybe I should have played into a little bit because we've got like 4.5 more minutes to go before the show turns over. But no, this is not a Pinky in the Brain situation.
What are we doing tonight, Nerd Ask Greg? Same thing we do every night. We're talking about the Detroit Pistons versus the Los Angeles Lakers and how the Pistons are an annoying team that I will always get a little bit of Jeremy Grant on. His usage rate, 27% with no Killian Hayes, always looks appealing to me. So I will be there again. Single-digit ownership for him. I'll probably be still single-digit, but a higher single-digit for Jeremy Grant is the one thing I got in my crunch. Mason Plumlee, I think also vaguely interesting. He's been a guy that I think people sleep on a lot this year, and in that Cody Zeller tier again. I don't always want to compare these guys against each other because they do look similar. They do share some certain DNA components, but overall, Plumlee rebounding at a high rate. Usage rate's been there. I think he's fine at center, though, much like a Steven Adams, not a guy that'd be a priority amidst the other value. Derrick Rose, we're expecting to play today, but he has been out the last 2 games with an illness after being expected to play in both of those. So keep your eye on that because that does make a guy like Delon Wright a little more appealing after he had a day. Nice fantasy day, but not one. I think this was yesterday where he had 5 steals or something like that really boosted his numbers. Greg, anything at all here for you on Detroit? I really feel like Jeremy Grant's the one that I could see getting, and these other guys I can make a case for, but I don't see actually landing on much of.
Yeah, Wayne Ellington is doubtful to play. Blake Griffin, who I thought was a rest candidate, but he's not listed on the injury report. So at this point, I'm going to assume that Blake Griffin is in. Here's the issue, though. I know that even though we say we don't project blowouts, if there was a game you're going to project as a blowout, it's the Detroit Pistons playing in Los Angeles to take on the Lakers. It's such a bad spot. The spread has actually come down a little bit earlier in the day. It was at 14.5. Now it's down to 13. So that does signify a little bit less blowout risk than we otherwise thought. But I don't feel great about targeting the Pistons in this game. I think there is still a pretty good chance this ends up being one-sided. Even if it's competitive, the total is really low for this game. It is 214, which is the lowest on the slate by a pretty wide margin. There's the Thunder Timberwolves game has a 218.5 total. There's not a single other game within 10 points of the total of this one. So I don't even know that these guys are likely to hit value, even if it stays a close game. And I don't necessarily think that that's something that's a lock to happen anyway. So I'm not going to really try to get Pistons in my lineup. If I get to a couple lineups with Jeremy Grant or Delon Wright, so be it. I'm not going to exit out and try to re-crunch my lineups, but nobody that I actively want to roster.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The Lakers side, I think we still have questionable Lakers as usual, but nothing that I think would actually be meaningful today. Though I think Anthony Davis' status might have been probable, and then it got changed to questionable. So I don't know, but my assumption would be that these guys are in, and Davis is questionable. LeBron is probable. So there we go. That's the most recent one from the injury report that Greg referenced that came out about a half hour ago. Any interest at all for the Lakers side? I feel like it's sort of the same thing. If Davis finds his way out, then LeBron gets a boost, Kuzma will get a boost, but right now, I don't see any reason to get a lot of these guys.
No, and the issue is just because we talked about some of those high-priced guys that are in really favorable spots, it just pinches the Lakers guys. I don't want to roster Anthony Davis or LeBron James at the opportunity cost of a James Harden, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So because those guys are such strong plays, I'm not going to be getting to LeBron or AD. There is also the blowout risk in this game. Even if the game is close, I don't necessarily think they're going to need 36, 37 minutes out of LeBron and AD to win. So this looks like a pretty good spot where they could pseudo rest them and maybe give them, like 30, 31 minutes and just kind of comfortably win a game against one of the worst teams in the NBA and use it as a game where they don't have to tax the workloads of Davis and LeBron.
All right, we got one super chat here from Charlie Reinhardt saying, "Do not be mean to Spags." Thank you. Look, people are gonna be weird in chat, especially one particular guy who it takes a lot for me to not like somebody, but somehow, some way, sometimes people accomplish that. And also, shout out Kevin Sadler. But thank you, Charlie, for the super chat. Also, thank you for the super draft. Thank you to SuperDraft for helping us put on this show. Make sure you're playing on there. Promo code Awesemo21 will get you a deposit match up to $50 right away. You can play that money, and you should play that money on SuperDraft because they have had a lot of overlay. So they try to get more users in just like you guys. Some big contests for the big game tomorrow coming up on SuperDraft, so play on there. And stay tuned for the extra half hour from Emac and Terry doing the SuperDraft exclusive show where they'll give you guys all the best plays. Greg, any plugs for you before you dramatically strut off and show off your pink chair? Nope, he's just getting up. He's just... Is that pink? Like, is there another level of pinkness to this? This is just white right now.
No, this is it. It's pink. I think the lighting might cause a little bit of an issue, but yeah, this is a pink chair.
Oh, what an overhype and under delivery on this pink chair. This is barely pink.
What do you want? What do you want me to do about it? Repaint it?
Wow, that's why we don't have pink chair time. It's money time on the channel. But what Emax saying it's a ripoff? People are more perplexed by the fur than the pinkness.
Are they gonna take their likes back now?
Our news god saying pimp chair more than a pink chair. Yeah.
There we go. And by the way, it is fuzzy. It looks like upholstery from Pimp My Ride. Remember when they used to have like all those ridiculous kinds of chairs and stuff? That is what it looks like. So I think that's the most apt reference.
Well, look, I'm glad that Greg is cozy. You get a little teaser here of Greg's warm-up pants, too, that he takes off before when the show starts and rips them off like an NBA player. But we appreciate all you guys watching. Shout out to my hosting partner, The Pink Chair. Tune in tomorrow. Greg will be back sitting down on that pink chair with Kyle leading the way here for our Super Bowl content. And then I get the Live Before Lock show with Josh right before, with a game plan in between with Laffy, Alex, and Ben. And stay tuned on the stream right now. Emac and Terry coming up next. Have a good day, guys, and good luck. We did get dislikes, by the way, for the chair.
I'll take a
picture. I don't know why I was expecting it to
pink.
be like a little girl's plastic pink chair.
It's exactly what I was thinking too, like a patio furniture pink chair.
Yeah, I stole
my Teddy Bear's jacket rendered as a chair.
I stole it from my sister when she went to college. It's really comfortable.
It looked comfy.
No, that's not pink.
It is. I'll send a picture to you. It's absolutely pink.
Thanks for cleaning up all the injury news, guys. Appreciate it.
There you go. Hey, have fun. Enjoy that, fellas.
All right, later, guys.
All right, have a good show.
You guys.
Yeah, okay.
5 on the hands, baby.
There's so much to unwind still with this. Okay.
All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a special, very special Saturday episode of Live Before Lock as we get ready to unpack. What?
What do you have planned? A very special episode?
Well, we're staying on for Super.
That means something, you know.
I know. We're staying on for Super Draft. There's only one game at 7. We're going to know what's going on. We're going to talk about late swap if we land on the correct side or the incorrect side of Nikolai Vucevic. There's all sorts of things going on here, Terry. How are you today? Only one show for you. Feels like you got kind of a day off here.
Did you not watch my game plan show? My subscribers only behind the paywall debut on the game plan show?
I did not. And I even...
It's okay. Everything's irrelevant now anyway. I talked all about OKC the whole time.
No, I touted that show too. And I thought it was going to be a Super Bowl edition on the late show last night. So I apologize.
Right on.
All right. Well,
yeah, but if you guys watch that out there, you could scratch off most of that lineup that we built. You could ignore half the column that I wrote this afternoon, which focused on OKC, assuming that most of the other guys were out who are going to be in, and most of the guys who were in are going to be out. So, yeah, a little bit upside down. And I'm still trying to catch up on what any of it means for the usage in my model here. So
yeah, absolutely. So while you're doing that, let me talk a little bit. I've got the phone alerts going off. They're not really telling us anything. We'll slowly break things down. Now, the key things you need to know, we're going to stay on until about 7:30 or so. And if other weird stuff happens and we're not running with dead lineups, perhaps we will talk a little bit more about that stuff. But we'll handle any breaking news that comes up to that. There is one game between 7 and 8 o'clock. That is the reprisal of last night's Chicago-Orlando game. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but then we have a ton of moving parts. But there's a lot of important information in what you want to do with that particular game because we still have a lot of uncertainty. Now, we may have some of that clear up before 7, but do you want to, waste roster spots on tertiary or secondary plays when there could be some really good ones with the other 8 games on our slate? So the only person I'm really going to play on that first game is going to be Nikolai Vucevic. And outside of that, I don't even think you have to play him there. I've got to decide where I want to come in once we start doing some ownership updates here, where I want to come in with him on that. And the main reason I say that is we've got Joel Embiid as a potential pivot. We don't know what's going on with Andre Drummond. Is he playing? Is he getting a night off? Because Jared Allen could all of a sudden be a thing. We know that Al Horford is resting, if I remember correctly, yet Roby is questionable. So we don't know a lot there. We've got DeMarcus Cousins, who's a phenomenal play when Christian Wood is out. I looked up some of this stuff. So Cousins has started 4 different times, and each game has been farther along in the season. So he's further removed from those 2 more or less catastrophic injuries that he's had. He's sort of playing himself into shape. Let's put it this way. He still owns the paint. There's no question about that. He's a great high post passer, and he's dropping threes. What he's not doing, really running the break or playing defense. Now, yes, he's getting a few blocks here and there and a few steals here and there, but that's just because he's giant and he's everywhere. But this is not the same. He doesn't even really move the same. It looks like he's on one leg kind of. But in his 4 starts, he has continually increased his minutes. He's played about 30 minutes on it. Averaging out those 4 starts, 15.3 points, 14.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 3.5 combined blocks and steals, and 2.5 made 3-pointers. So if you're using Vooch now, you don't get that later unless you're playing on DraftKings. On Yahoo and SuperDraft, there is no Vooch because their main slates are starting at 8. We're all over the place. The pandemic is great. Oh, and by the way, Chris Davis now will likely be suiting up for Texas. No, not that Chris Davis, the other Chris Davis. They've now both theoretically will have suited up for Texas. The simulation gets better every day, Terry. It really does. All right. How are you there on those usages?
We'll get there.
All right. Well, as you're working those in, we got a few more minutes of housekeeping here just to get this out of the way. Appreciate all you guys coming in. Let's turn some of those thumbs down for that not pink chair back to thumbs up. For Eric and Terry here, for your old pal EMAC. We do have some free content today. It is the NBA player rankings. I will drop those into the Slack chat, into the YouTube chat here. We also have NHL player projections. They lock in an hour. NHL is free. Fortunately, I've already made my NHL lineups. There's 2 7 o'clock games there and 2 8 o'clock games. So I was comfortable playing those even though we were going to be on the show. And then tennis is back. We've got the Melbourne tournament, I guess, is still going. Well, I learned I can't say open or invitational because those actually mean something. Right. So, and it's neither. And so I don't know what they call it, but it looks like fun.
Tournament works.
We do have the Australian Open coming up next week, though, or actually in a few days. So remember, that is in Australia. So the time differences are going to be really wonky. But we have our, speaking of simulations, we have our simulated tennis projections up. That's one of a handful of projections that Alex doesn't oversee. He utilizes them, does some quality control with them, et cetera. But that's Blaine Youngworth who takes care of that for us. One of our guys that does a lot of content for some of our ancillary sports there. Ancillary. God damn it. It's a word that's just I've been tripping up on it for 3 days, and I keep using it incorrectly.
No, Blaine the smart, sharp dude, though.
Oh,
so,
yeah. He's
good source for those projections. And, yeah.
Well, he and Giovanni, who does the soccer stuff, those guys know what they're doing. So we got some pretty good guys. Oh, and I killed it in NHL last night. 5X.
Nice.
Crushed it.
Great night.
That was the Jay Carey projections. So
right on.
All right. And God, we're going to go tertiary. We're going to go secondary. We're going to go alternative. We're not going to use that other word. And then SuperDraft sponsoring the show. Oh, last one, Awesemo giveaway. Go to Awesemo_COM and drop that into chat. The pinned tweet. We're giving away 1 full year of Awesemo All Access Premium. Details are on that pinned tweet. It's you need to follow that by tomorrow's Super Bowl kickoff, because that is where the fun is going to be. All right, talk to us about the first game here, Terry. Are you playing on the blue site, the green site?
Yeah, mostly where I'm usually playing on over on Fanduel. So that's where I'll be again tonight. I think there are useful pieces in this game. Denzel Valentine was a guy that popped up before when we were talking about this game. He came down a little bit, but we had marketing is not going to be playing. So I'm not sure if that's accounted for in this last update that I'm looking at, but he kind of came down from where he was looking earlier in the day in terms of the optimal lineup appearance rate and what Alex is expecting from him. Still a 22-minute projection guy who can produce in that much time for very little investment at the shooting guard or small forward spot, depending on where you're playing. But he's a guy who probably slipped a little bit off of my radar. Looking through most of the picks, I was getting to some Zach LaVine earlier in the day. I was definitely getting to a good amount of Nikola Vukovic. Particularly on FanDuel, the center spot was basically divided between Cousins, Andre Drummond, and Vukovic again. So Cousins was my favored play out of those guys in terms of who I think has the most upside for the salary tonight. Thank you, Rabasha, pointing out that Larry's not in the projections. I appreciate that. But I think it just makes sense to get to all three guys to some degree. So I will definitely want to get to some Vooch. I do hate the way they have this staggered, where this game starts an hour before the other ones, and it's going to take up the singular center spot. So I like the ability to kind of move pieces around and play multiple centers on DK, like we talk about a lot. I think there's a pretty killer build if you look at like a Vooch Boogie in the util spot, and then a Roby if he goes and gets a decent amount of run in place of Horford at a forward spot. Building with those three guys as kind of a foundation in the front court, I think is a pretty strong start to a DraftKings build, and should leave you with some money to spend up on some of the quality stars on the board. So there are ways to play the relevant pieces from this game without too much danger. Other guys in like the mid-range would be Pat Williams, Kobe White, maybe Cole Anthony. Fournier is a guy I never really trust, but he's also on the board in terms of Alex's numbers. Comes up a little less from me. He just gets pushed down a little bit by my projections. And there's still some value at the small forward spot on FanDuel, so I'm just not getting to him as much.
All right. I'm going to drop in the chat. I see Craig Arrowwood asking Maximilian Kleber or Roby. We're not going to know until we know what Roby is doing or not doing. The answer is, in my opinion, is Roby if he's playing. We'll have to wait and see. Let's drop this. We have 2 more left to get into the Fred Van Elite contest. Another way we're giving away some Awesemo content. You win that with an Awesemo avatar, and you get 30 free days of Awesemo All Access Premium. Must fill to run. You do not have to play Fred Van Vliet. I do. But if you win and don't have an Awesemo avatar, you do not get the prize. So there we go. 2 spots left. Jump on in that one. And if we get, how many likes do we want? I'm going to play some head-to-heads tonight, Terry. We are at 735 likes. 1,000? 900?
Got to get over 1,000.
1,000? All right. None
of
of
this.
this.
Be giving money away by throwing head-to-heads out there.
I know. So let's get a nice little push up there to 800. Come on, borrow the old Adam Kaufman phrase here. You guys can do it. We got 2,500 of you 2,600 of you watching now. You want those sweet, sweet EMAC bucks. Let me tell you about that. Definitely jump on in there. And Jordan, I see you laughing over there. They can't see you. Jordan's now hiding his face. Why don't you send me a little invite there, Jordan, on DK? I know we're friends on DK.
Ooh, throwing down the gauntlet.
And we'll go this. Heads up for rolls.
Get him, Jordan.
Heads up for rolls. All right. So a lot of moving parts here. Let's kind of walk through some of the stuff we do have. Let me call up an injury list here and see what we have got. I did want to talk about the back-to-back. So that's one of the wild cards tonight is we have a lot of teams on back-to-back. So only 2 teams are playing tomorrow that played today, and they're both in action or have already played. That would be, I think it's New York and I want to say Sacramento I think. Let me get to my notes here. So
They
that's
aren't on the slate, so.
right. So they're not on this slate, so we don't have to worry about it. Don't tell me I overwrote all of my. I did. I went and wrote every one of these out, and then I typed over it. That is not savvy. But we do have Minnesota at OKC reprising their roles tonight. They're both on a back-to-back. Chicago, Orlando, they're reprising their game from last night. They're both on a back-to-back. Toronto, Brooklyn, New Orleans, Detroit are on a back-to-back. And then Sacramento and New York are on a back-to-back tomorrow, but they've already played today. I just wrote this on the wrong show sheet. So
as I was putting my stuff together for today, I more than once went back to make sure that I wasn't just using yesterday's data by mistake, because so many of these games are repeats of yesterday, similar situations. So,
a couple of them are from Thursday as well, like Golden State and Dallas.
Right.
So I'm saying, didn't these teams just play each other? What's going on?
Weird
This
here.
is crazy.
Weird.
We got a Fear and Loathing in New York City. One of your favorite names.
Rock and roll. Love it.
He says, what is the best small forward value on FanDuel? And he said, were you sporting a swinging udders shirt last week? I don't know what that
I
means.
saw after the fact that he asked that question, I was actually about to answer it. Yes, that was a swinging udders shirt. This is a face-to-face shirt. This is a face-to-face shirt. I'm not sure if you didn't hear me when I went off mic. And I'm not quite sure who the best small forward play is just yet on FanDuel. I think we've got a little bit of news to go in that OKC game. But let me get to it while I stall, and I'll give you a few options at least. Keldon Johnson still looks quite good. I think Dort is, assuming he's going to get full run, is probably not going to get the ownership that he would warrant if people had more time on that change that he's going to be in. Only 3,700, definitely a good chance of putting up a good score on that salary. Over on DK, he's not as in play nearly. He's 1,000 more expensive on DK. You can put him at the shooting guard or the small forward, but not nearly as interested in him over there. So it would be Keldon and then Chris Middleton at the top for small forward. And then you've got kind of a wide range from Dort through like a Joe Harris. Rudy Gay is somewhat in play with a Marcus Aldridge out in San Antonio. Fournier, I mentioned, I don't get to a ton, but he's certainly in that same range. There's a lot of guys in like that 15 to 10 to 15. That was a weird way to say that 10 to 15 range on the optimal lineup appearance rate. So it's a position that had a ton of value earlier, and now it's kind of landing in the mid-range outside of Dort.
All right. So we have one more question here. Charlie Reinhart would like to know, with all the illness and injury, any interest in Kevin S tonight? That would be Kevin Stadler. Got him!
Talking about.
Got him! There we go! That would be the golfer, Kevin Stadler.
What?
He tries to get Lofty every time.
That was good.
There you go. That was worth $2. I prefer Craig myself.
I was like, who am I not? Really? Is it somebody from the G League? Good one. Well done.
There we go.
I didn't have enough curveballs I was dealing with already.
Yes, it was the perfect moment. I had to go for it.
I had
to go for it. All right, let's get it. Let's get a few more likes for that one. Come on, that was a fun one. We're here to have fun with you guys and make the time pass along wisely. So I have gone with my main. I'm just playing on DK tonight. I'll make some lineups when we get over to SuperDraft and play a couple over there. But I am just playing the 8 o'clock players in my main slate, and my placeholder lineup has Baisley, Nas Reed, Anthony Davis, and DeJounte Murray. It's just sitting there with questionable guys. I am right now, we'll see if I actually make additional lineups, but I am also playing the tiers contest. I have my placeholder lineup with everybody from late games with the exception of Vooch. So if I don't get to those, I'll live with that. And if I don't get Vooch tonight, I'm okay with that because we have that plethora of options. We still, again, know what's going on with Joel Embiid. We talked about DeMarcus Cousins, et cetera. Let's kind of do a little run here through here. And I've got a lot of windows up. So if we get any other super chats or news starting to break, we'll have to check this out. Here's one to start while I'm pulling up the list. So this is for you, Terry. Would you stay away from rostering Porzingis and Luka together on FanDuel? I would not make any rules against it. I would probably need to get to about my third lineup before I put it together. If I played both of them, I would try to have somebody coming back from the other side, ideally Curry. How do you want to handle that on the FanDuel side? I don't play on FanDuel very often, so.
Yeah, Luka was one of my top plays on the boards overall, and most specifically, of course, at the point guard spot. He just blows everybody else out of the water at that position. So he's still coming up in a tremendous amount of the optimal lineups. And Kristaps at the price for only 7,800, I think is definitely playable alongside him. I agree. I wouldn't make a rule about it. I wouldn't go out of my way to prevent it from happening. It's not my favorite build. It was something I was getting to a little bit earlier in the game plan show. But I think with the way some of the value moved around, you might not want to do it too much, but I definitely wouldn't block it from happening. I think there's definitely a path for both of them to get there. They're both, the primary cogs in that offense, and they kind of help one another out a little bit in terms of the scoring. So I don't mind that. I agree. It makes a lot of sense to run somebody back from the other side of that one. Steph would make some sense in that role, but then you're taking up both point guard spots with pretty premium guys. Outside of that, I guess, if you wanted to go like a Wiggins, if you wanted to go with Draymond, he was on the board at the power forward spot. But again, then you'd be going to potentially two power forwards from the same game and taking some of the value plays off the board. So it's changed up a lot since earlier. I'm curious to see. I'm about to run a crunch, so I'm curious to see how some of that comes together.
But hold off on that crunch. We're getting our next wave of news in. It sounds like Roby is out. Larry Nance is available. Trae Young is available. Okongwu is available. Simmons and Curry are both available. Blake Griffin, that's old news. He's not listed on the injury report, but it is a back-to-back. Those are key things we want to look at. Now we're going to have to see where Mike Muscala lands. If he's center only, I don't feel great about that, but he does come into play on the sites where you can play two centers. That is key. Oops, I just killed my Roby alert. Roby is out. Never mind, I did say that. Okay. So I see a couple people in chat saying, how do I get you guys to answer my questions? Do I have to pay you? No, you don't. But we will answer super chats. But if you also go into premium Slack, we've got all sorts of people answering the questions there. We try to get to those questions first. And to do that, you need to be a member of Awesemo. So if you go to awesemo.com/join, you can see all of the different packages that we have. And you can get in at as little as $5 a week, depending on the package. And that package does come with the Slack chat. And that's one of our most valuable things. Also, when you're a member on that, you can, for the NBA one, you can see the premium building videos behind the scenes and get office hours. And that's where a ton of questions are asked. What we're trying to do is teach you guys and gals how to read the slate, how to understand what's going on, how to utilize the Awesemo tools, and then make the decisions that work for you. If we just want to tell you what the plays are, it's not worthwhile, because everything that's lacking so much context. We can tell you the top plays, but if you're not putting your lineups together correctly, it's not going to be the most helpful thing. Gamers are, the field is much more sophisticated than it was, and it gets more difficult to beat every day. But that's what we're doing here, is we're helping you guys get that advantage. So
yeah, and the entire site is built around that for the people who only come to us on YouTube. It's a very much and I've used this phrase before, it's a teach you how to fish kind of a site. It's not a give you fish kind of a site. You know the old saying, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a day. Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. That's what we're trying to do, is impart the knowledge, impart the wisdom that Alex has put together, that some of us have come up with, in what we do, and share that and teach you guys, bring your overall game up so that you're able to do this on your own. So that's the way that the entire site is built. We've had people who get upset about that sometimes, just looking for the handout type plays. It's just not what we're about, so we love getting questions and answering them, but hopefully we steer you the right way in terms of, teaching you something as we answer some 1v1s and questions like that.
Yeah. And a lot of the questions here are not great, or they'll none of it. They don't help the broader audience. Right. And if we see those, it just gets to be a little hard. So here's a good one, actually. Chris Boucher or Jeff Green. Now, in this one, I'm going to take Jeff Green. Why? Chris Boucher was awesome last night. Well, Chris Boucher only played against DeAndre Jordan for about 2 or 3 minutes yesterday. The rest of the time, it was small ball 5 of Jeff Green and Kevin Durant. Tonight, he's going against Clint Capella. Now, with that context, do you prefer Chris Boucher or Jeff Green? That's my read on it. What would you think from that situation?
It's closer than I thought it would be, given the change in, with everybody out for Brooklyn and Jeff Green getting a pretty significant run in Alex's projections. But Green would probably be the play. You're getting a little bit better leverage if you go to Boucher, but I don't fully trust the role. Alex only has him projected for 22 minutes. If he gets like 28, he's probably going to be fantastic at the spot. If he gets 22, he's going to be, meh to, tough to pay off his value. So he's got good metrics across the board from Alex, good producer when he's in there. It's just in that either or, I don't fully trust him as much as I trust the role, the minutes, the opportunity for Jeff Green. So I would go with Green.
Yeah. And
that's a different answer than it was earlier in the day.
Yeah. And these are the ones that we want to teach you guys how to do and how to think for yourself and come up with the opinion, because that's helpful context right there on that one. Somebody asking, is Maladon in play? He's totally fine. As long as he clears the health and safety protocol. I believe it was an incidental or contact tracing. Orton's Neckbeard has one of the best super chats I've seen yet. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Give a man a poisoned fish, feed him for a lifetime. Well done, sir.
Sharp.
Well done.
If that's original, I like that a lot.
All right, let's see. Embiid game time decision. Yes, we're not sure what's going to happen. But again, all these games are starting at 8. So I suspect we'll see a little bit more information. For those of you wondering, Roby is out. Does Cousins being limited to 30 minutes matter? No, I don't. I wouldn't expect him to play more than probably 32. I would have probably, assuming we're projecting him somewhere between 30 and 32. In his last 4 times that he started, I read off those stats where he had 15.3 points per game, 14.3 rebounds, just shy of 4 assists, 3.5 combined block steals. I'm hoping for that. He did that in an average of 30 minutes per game. So I'm comfortable if he's only going to play 30.
Yeah, I loved him, and I had him projected, I think, for 29. So if he gets 32, even better. But the cap doesn't worry me at all. That's around what we're assuming anyway, whether they had announced that or not. That's what he plays.
Yep. Saw somebody asking, so Thaddeus Young is on a back-to-back. I'm just going to look here and see. The last back-to-back he had, he played 25 and 23 minutes. That was on January 22nd and 23rd. He played 19 and 25 minutes on the 17th and 18th. He played 27 and 23 minutes, although it was a blowout against Milwaukee on that second game. That was back on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So I'm not worried about him being on the back-to-back. They're really short on bodies there. When did he become a center? I swear at some point we may have rostered him a decade ago at shooting guard, maybe. So, definitely right? Small forward for sure, power forward. Yahoo has him as a center. $20 played him last night. Not a bad play there. Steals were 3 as our blocks, same as on SuperDraft. Sponsor of the show. We'll be going an extra half hour for SuperDraft tonight. If you guys haven't made a deposit yet, make one now. Use the promo code Awesemo21. That's Awesemo21. And they will match your first deposit up to $50. That comes in the form of Super Cash, which is available for immediate use. And it automatically comes out of your content first. All right. Is Embiid playing? Well, we're waiting to find that one out.
Just real quick on the Thad one on FanDuel. He's a little bit priced up. He is a center on FanDuel as well, but not somebody who was very much in play for me over there just because of the price. It's caught up with him for what he's contributing. He was much more appealing when he was cheaper. 7,100 at the center spot where you can only play one guy. And we've got those 3 other really good looking plays that we talked about on the board. He's just not working his way in the lineups for me. I don't hate him in general. I think he's going to deliver for his salary, probably around his median projection. I don't think you're looking at an upside opportunity there though.
All right. Joel Embiid participated in the Sixers team shoot-around. That's a good sign, but still game time decision. That was a tweet provided by our own news guy. Very helpful. We get the premium Slack chat. I can go right there. It's all organized. Yes, you can find a lot of the stuff on Twitter. Heck, you can find a lot of it on Awesemo, NBA, Awesemo_COM, and NewsGod, NEWZGOD_DFS, I think. I forget. He'll drop it in there. But I want it all in one spot. I got too many tabs open. I can just go right into there to the dedicated Slack channel and see it all there at once. Can you play Zach and White together for a FanDuel GPP? I have no issues doing that.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Both of those players to me are secondary plays in tournaments, but I don't mind it.
Yeah, neither one of them was a real leader for me from the top of my board. Levine would be the preferred out of the two. He was the one I was getting to a little bit, changed a little bit throughout the day, and probably will be getting to him less. And he's going to be owned, so you're not really sneaking up on anybody. You're also booking two of your guard spots into that early game, which, given the potential for flexibility and news emerging and completely changing the slate as we go, might not want to do that. I don't hate the idea of playing them side by side in general.
All right, I'm hoping you didn't read my article today. We're going to do a little pop quiz, and this is for Isaiah Hill. He's asking us a question about locking in Luka on Fanduel. Is Luka having a good year or not as good of a year as compared to last year?
He is slightly down, I believe, in fantasy points per minute, 153 versus 157, based on what I'm looking at here.
That's about what it was. This is supposed to be a thought exercise, but thank you for jumping ahead with the answer. So what I wanted to say is I thought he was probably having a disappointing season. I went and looked at it side by side last year versus this year. His rebounds are down by 0.6 per game, but his assists are up by 0.6 per game. He is shooting a little bit worse from beyond the arc, but a little bit better from the free throw line. His overall field goal rate is down by 0.5%. That's it. That's basically negligible at this point. And his fantasy points per minute are almost identical. So no, he's not having a bad game. I did see 2 nights ago where I was watching that, 2 games ago for them where I was watching that. And the announcers were saying, oh, he might be a little bit hurt or he's not making his shots from downtown. I went and looked. He's not the best 3-point shooter. I think he's shooting about 29% this year. I think for his career, he's like 30.3. So
yeah, you're talking
I'll take a 1% variant. It's not like he's going, from a lights out shooter, 39, 42% down to 29. No. The error bars are perfectly fine on this one. So is he a lock? He's one of the 3 core plays I want to play tonight on Draftkings. How is he on Fanduel?
On Fanduel, very much so. He is less expensive than he is on DK. He's only 10-7 on Fanduel. You have to play 2 point guards. And he is essentially double. He is actually exactly double the optimal lineup appearance rate of every other point guard on the slate. Not getting ridiculous ownership. He's slightly negative in our leverage metric, which means he's getting a little bit more ownership than the optimal lineup rate. But I think it's at a point where you can easily get well above it and still be comfortable with some other roster shares with guys like DeJounte Murray if he goes. You can get to some Steph Curry in those spots. But the overwhelming share of my point guards in at least one of the spots is going to go to Luka. I would never call anybody, not never, but I do not like calling people a lock and using that term in the literal sense. But he's going to come up to such a degree that he might as well be a lock for me tonight.
All right. Free content today is not the player ownership. We may mention a few of those, but in the meantime, it is the player rankings. Put it this way, go find anybody that has an A points grade and an A value grade, and they're going to be one of the highest owned players of the night. You can definitely back into that one. How are we doing on the likes here? Wow, only 830. We have 2,700 people watching. I said get to 1,000. You got 28 minutes left. Get to 1,000. I'll drop in some $1 head-to-heads here. We're staying on for an extra 30 minutes to talk SuperDraft. Their lock is not until 8 o'clock tonight. Yahoo locks at 8. DK and FanDuel lock at 7. But as we've mentioned, there's only one game between 7 and the 8 o'clock game. So we're still waiting on some confirmation for some news. All right. They feel like EMAC is stacking the Bulls. No. Had a fair amount last night. Had a ton kind of coming in. I spent almost an hour crafting my perfect player portfolio, the lineups, and then I accidentally global changed everybody to 25% exposure instead of 25% randomness. And I had not saved my player pool. And so I had to make some changes, but it worked out.
Yeah, frequent saving in Fantasy Cruncher is pretty key. Anytime you create something, especially if you spent a long time on it, save it. That was a good idea.
No one wants to play me. Okay, well, fine. If you get us to 1,000 likes, I'll give you the top 5 owned players on both sides. How's that? I don't want to horn in on Spags' shtick.
You don't have the hat for it.
I do love the money hat, by the way. But all right. If we need to give a little more emphasis here, I would have thought me giving away my head-to-heads would be worthwhile. But I guess that's not enough because I've been winning too much, probably. All right.
You can like mail everybody $2 if they hit the thing, but that's basically the same idea as you putting out head-to-heads, no?
Yeah, it would be. All right. So key things. Denzel Valentine is starting. Thaddeus in. We know Lauri Markkanen's out. Moving along. Durant's still in the health and safety protocol. God, I could spend an hour talking about what happened last night and still not even sure what they were doing. Foolishness there by the NBA. Ben Simmons playing. Seth Curry is in. We talked about that. Toronto, nothing crazy for Atlanta. Danilo Gallinari is in. Trae Young being in sort of eliminates Rondo. Kevin Huerter being in kind of tosses Rondo out to the side. D'Angelo Russell still listed as doubtful. I don't think he's going to play tonight.
Yeah, I've had him out for most of the day.
And then it does look, so Teo Maladon. I don't know. Did they say Teo? I think he's French.
Teo. I'm fine with Theo.
So let's see here. Yes, I'm okay playing him. Not really doing cartwheels. He is going to kind of be one of the major ball handlers, but SGA is back. So now he's going to be getting all of his fantasy points, or most of them, via scoring. Remember, we talked about him 2 games ago. I can't remember if it was me and you or me and Eric that did this, but he went 6 for 6 from 3, tying a rookie record. That was before everybody had gotten hurt. That was boosting him one night. He's totally fine, but I don't know what we're going to get from him. Roby being out with the foot injury, I guess it helps Bazley, but we still got to see if he's going to Basley, but I guess we got to see if he's going to be in. Cruising through here, Rudy Gay available to play, no LaMarcus Aldridge, no Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray questionable. Do you like Derek White back from the fractured toe?
Yeah, particularly if Murray doesn't play, but I think White's on the board a little bit either way. So definitely could get to him. Not sure how much he'll actually end up coming up, but in theory, I like the play. I think he makes a lot of sense. Guy who's produced in the past. Just trying to jump over here, see what Alex still has Murray in. And they come up right next to each other essentially, and you're saving 1,900 on Fanduel and more than that over on DK, 2,100 on DK it looks like. So yeah, even as an alternate to Murray, I think maybe he makes some sense. It's kind of a value play who there's some people on him on Fanduel. It looks like there's a lot more people on him on DK for the 4,700 price tag. He's up around 25% ownership over there, but he's coming up in a decent amount of the optimal lineups. So, I guess he's on the board a little bit more than I thought he was even. So don't have a problem with getting to him.
All right. Go check out the Awesemo_COM pinned tweet, dropping the link there into chat. So you're going to want to get to that. I see Isaiah Hill asking a super chat question. Got the weekly NBA Express, but it's not letting you see ownership projections. It did yesterday. That is one of the 2 things you don't get with the Express package. Yesterday, the ownership projections were free, which is why you were seeing them. It's not part of that package, though. If you have other questions, you can definitely make sure you're in Slack. People help answer you there. And or if you reach out to support, they can help you as well. And then if you go to that awesemo.com/join page, it'll tell you the different things that are in the various packages. Chad would like.
That's just a real quick note on that, since it comes up to the support email quite often. As you mentioned, it's not an all-inclusive package on that Express plan. It's a great plan for entry-level play, which is what it's intended for. It's intended for people who hand-build a couple lineups, don't play every day, put a few lineups in, and need help, need a hand, need that to be given that fish. So if you're looking for the real Awesemo experience, all the data, and the teach you how to fish approach, you want to start at the weekly subscription level. We've got different prices based on weekly, monthly, annual, et cetera, but you really want to be looking for that standard subscription level. It's a little bit more, but you get a heck of a lot more out of it. So there's the sale.
Now, what is in there is the NBA ownership rankings. So while that's not giving you the exact percentage of each player, it ranks them 1 through whatever, all the way down. If you sort it by position, you can tell who's at the top. Basically, just to help out, if someone's super chalky and someone's out and you know that, they're probably going to be around 50%. If someone is in the top 7 at each of their positions, they're probably at the lowest person is probably going to be owned about 20%. And then once you get to 10 and below, they're going to be 10% to single digits. That's generally how it plays out on the larger slates. 2-game slates, Throw all that out the window. Everybody's going to be owned. But that's kind of how you can sort of back into those numbers. We're not selling you a bill of goods. So to finish up, what Alex tried to do is say, what is the cheapest I can offer to give somebody a chance to make competent lineups so they can come home late from work, jump on in, check out stuff for 30 minutes, make a few lineups, kick back, watch their games. So he said, I want to keep that around $5 or less per week. What can I give somebody that will do that?
Yeah, and then we have a great entry point. Like I was saying, it's, for somebody who's coming into this, or somebody, the casual player, it's a fantastic entry point, and it's all the data that you would need. And it's put together. At that point, you don't want the specific ownership numbers, the specific projections. The ranked version helps a lot. It helps you really parse the data quickly and get down to the key plays. So it's a great package. I'm not trying to bring it down. I was trying to bring up the other stuff because there is so much behind the paywall at the standard level.
Yeah, don't worry. We stand behind all this stuff. This is the stuff Alex is using. Speaking of Alex, he just dropped another ownership percentage. Where are we on the likes? 930. I told you I'd give you the Spags treatment. Get us to 1,000, and we'll give you the top couple. Spags, my apologies, but this is moving the needle. So this is the Chris Spags official hat tip. Get it? Hat tip.
Nice.
Money time.
Nothing wrong with stealing a good bid.
All right. SGA or Oladipo? That's a good question. I'm going to go SGA. I'm assuming if he's in, he's going to be healthy. Oladipo, we're not entirely sure what's happening with John Wall, who's dealing with back spasms and is a game time decision. If Wall is in, he and Oladipo will sort of curb each other's upsides. How are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, it's not one I had considered as a direct comparison, just because I didn't have SGA in like most people for most of the day. But I think what you said makes some sense there. I still don't really trust the role for Oladipo in Houston. They're talking about potentially flipping him. I don't know if that means they're going to put him out there more or rest him a little bit more, not feature him as much, not give him quite as much run because they don't want him to get hurt, type of player. So I just don't really trust the role there. So like you said, if SGA is out there, I have to assume he's healthy, going to get his full run. And he looks pretty good on the board. So, yeah, give me SGA. Wasn't expecting it.
All right. And it's EMAC infomercial day. Well, today's kind of hard because there's so much up in the air. Whatever we're going to say could easily be reverse course. We are staying on for another 30 minutes to talk SuperDraft. In the meantime, we will also react to any news that happens after the lock of the only game that is here. How do you feel about Levine? I can't believe I did that. It's been one of those days. Levine versus SGA. I would lean towards Levine in this case.
Yeah, Levine was a guy that I was getting to a good amount. They compare pretty favorably on the board for Fanduel as of the last update that I was looking at in terms of the optimal rate and everything. I just think there's a little bit too much question mark, taking it kind of the other way, knowing that SGA was not expected to play most of the day. We can kind of read in the question mark in this comparison and give me Levine on that side for the opposite argument. A little wacky to put it that way, but.
How do you feel about why am I blanking on its name? Cole. I was going to say Cole Beasley. I'm like, that's the wrong sport. Cole Anthony for Orlando after his nice night last night. We're seeing him consistently play above 30 minutes. He is now finally getting those assist production. It's taken a while since Markelle Fultz has been down, and there are so many non-traditional facilitators there in Orlando starting to pop on the radar. Do we want to keep jumping in until the price gets too high?
Yeah, I think so. He's a kid I was getting to, throughout the year so far, and don't plan on stopping until that price does go up beyond his level of production. And I don't think it's caught up with him completely yet. So on FanDuel, I mentioned my love for Luka at the position. I think he's just an extremely good play there. But going beyond him, there was a pretty broad range of guys who were dead even in terms of what their value looked like, in terms of their optimal lineup rates, in terms of their boom scores, and just in general, in terms of role health, usually being in their usual spot. So he's right in that same mix with guys like Kobe White, Dejounte Murray, Steph Curry, Ricky Rubio. They're all right around level. They're all getting some attention in the mid-teens, so it's kind of a broad crapshoot at the second point guard spot. A lot of it's going to depend on what I have with salary after I roster some of the other positions. I would not mind getting to a little bit of Steph Luka head-to-head in that spot, since anytime Steph's under 10K, I don't mind getting to him, even though he hasn't really hit the ceiling. I want to be there when he does. So I wouldn't mind doing some of that. But there's a broad spectrum of plays at the point guard spot today on FanDuel.
All right. We are 30 likes. We are 20 likes away from 1,000. That'll get you the top 5 ownership rankings on both sites. And it will also get you 10 head-to-heads from me dropped into the DK lobby. Let's get there. One final push. Crest us on over 1,000. It's always a nice number to see when we're doing this. For those of you that are playing against me, in the head-to-heads, there's a very good chance, I'm not going to guarantee it, but there's a very good chance you're going to end up getting my Fred VanVleet lineup. So there you go. Yet another bonus to jump on in there. And Terry, we are now at 1,000 likes. Would you like to do the honors, good sir?
Do you need a moment or?
No, I've got it. I'm good. I'm
good.
Not playing anybody from the first game. I've decided.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm just trying to get this crunch run for the
first one. You have the real American dollars. I'm good. We'll flip roles once we get to the other show. But enjoy. No Vooch for me tonight. So number 1 on DK, this is as of 11 seconds ago, hot off the press. DeMarcus Cousins at 58%, Bruce Brown at 55%. I'm rounding slightly. Mike Muscala at 38, James Harden at 38, Nikolai Vucevic 33, and Jordan McLaughlin at 32. I did not mention it, but Vanderbilt is starting as well for Minnesota. Turning over to the blue site. That would be FanDuel. James Harden, 46. DeMarcus Cousins, 41. Luka Doncic, 35. Muscala, power forward eligible there, 32. Keldon Johnson, 31. Ricky Rubio, who I think is starting now, 29. Kristaps Porzingis, 29. Gave you guys a little bit of a bonus there. Let's not say EMAC doesn't help us out. And Yahoo, which starts at 8 o'clock. DeMarcus Cousins, 86.4%. Wow. $16. James Harden, 46. Ricky Rubio, 34. Jeff Green, 29. Jeff Green's power forward. Also power forward Mike Muscala at the site minimum 10. Naz Reid, $10. He's 29%. Naz Reid, 27%. Luka, Kristaps is 22%. There you go. Look at that. Huge bonuses. And we're staying on for an extra half hour. You don't even have to pay us for that. Because you know what? We're going to tell you about SuperDraft because they are now partnered with Caesars Palace. So they have Caesars Rewards program in there. They're doing a contest with the big game this Sunday. They have over $1.3 million in prize pools, including $1 million contest. Here's your chance to make some serious cash over there. They're expecting overlays. That's their marketing tool. We know this. They're telling us this. They want us to do these shows because they want to tell us to tell you about them. Awesemo 21, Awesemo 21 is the promo code. Your first deposit of $50 or more, they'll give you $50. They'll match it. They have the app in the App Store or at superdraft.io on your computer. Check it out today. I hear a bunch of alerts going off.
Yeah, Dejounte Murray most likely in per pop and D'Angelo Russell out.
Okay, there we go. We're looking good. 13 minutes to go here before lock. I did drop those head-to-head contests there into the DraftKings lobby, just $1. Username EMAC. And if you want to beat me, play Vooch because I'm not going to put Vooch in that lineup. There's my guarantee for you. I'm just giving away all sorts of stuff. Let's see.
Are you playing Fred VanVleet in that lineup too?
I'm not 100% guaranteed, but we're going to be on air up until close to lock, and I've got a bunch of other things going on here, so there's a good chance that it just ends up with that one.
Well, Freddie's not exactly the handicap he used to be at one point.
No.
Contest of yours.
Well, let's talk about that. You know what's going overlooked? Kyle Lowry. Yes. 3 phenomenal games in a row, including the one where Fred VanVleet set the Toronto Raptors record in 54 points in a single game. 1 3-pointer shy. He got 11. The record was 12. Donyell Marshall. Not Donnie, but Donyell Marshall.
Was it Donyell Marshall? I didn't realize that.
And you know who he dropped him over? Terrence Ross, who had the next highest number at 10 when he was a Raptor.
Wow.
On his way to 51 points.
Didn't even remember that. Jeez.
Let's see. I don't know what that one means. I don't. D'Lo, Levine, and Green. No. Rubio, Mega Knight. Nah. Any love for Norman Powell? I like him. He's kind of Fred VanVleet light. The price is up too high. I'd rather at this point where everyone's priced, I'd rather play Lowry amongst all their players.
Yeah, I liked the look of Lowry earlier. I'm just jumping over to Toronto on my board real quick because Powell he was a guy who came up in the course of the show that I did earlier, but it was in terms of being a potential value play, and it looks like he slipped back down the board pretty significantly. So he's not really that in play. I don't mind him as, cog in the machine, mix and match kind of a guy, but definitely not jumping out. Only around 2% of the optimal lineups on either side. So good player, but probably overpriced, like you said.
Boy, all of a sudden I went into a Pink Floyd flashback there when you said cog in the machine. I started thinking the lyrics of Welcome to the Machine. How many people get that one? Come on, you guys. If you're out there vaping the good cartridges, try a little Pink Floyd. Trust your old pal on that one. I don't know about vaping on the cartridges. That was a long time ago and we didn't have cartridges or vaping. But that with Pink Floyd, highly guaranteed.
The Wizard of Oz, The Dark Side of the Moon, all that.
Absolutely. Shocker of shockers, Jonas Valanciunas playing tonight. He has not played for nearly a month. Kind of mucks everything up. He's been out for so long. I really don't want to play him. And then same thing with everybody because he had COVID. If they haven't officially announced it, remember the whole team's back and he didn't come back. So he had it. I don't know what to do. Jimmy Butler looked good. Some of the other players have looked horrible. This impacts everybody differently. So I don't know if he had mild asymptomatic type symptoms and was just testing positive a whole lot or what. But until I see it with so many other options tonight, not interested in Joe Val. And Grayson Allen's back as well. That just kind of mucks up everybody for them. Do you like anybody on the Pelly's side? I'm just buying time to see if we get any more news till.
Yeah. Let's see. Ingram was kind of on my radar earlier, not as like a featured play, but as a guy who could mix into some lineups. I know I mentioned him on the show earlier. Just seeing if anything changed in that take.
There's a lot of Pink Floyd fans.
Yeah, it looks like Ingram would be the most on the board, and then the other guys are from the Memphis side. Everybody's at like that mix and match level, though. You're getting negative leverage on Ingram, which makes me like him a little bit less on FanDuel. Positive points on the leverage score on DK, where he's 200 more expensive. Small forward and power forward eligibility. I could get to him a little bit over there, but a lower percentage of being in the optimal. So they're just better plays, I think, than either side of this game.
Up front, Fanatic, if your lips move, but I can't hear what you're saying. That's right. You know why? Because I have become comfortably numb.
Nice.
Let's see here. What did I want to point out? It was on the later game here.
And that could have just been a Scorsese fan, too, because he's used that song in like 4 movies at this point, I think. Between that and the Rolling Stones, Scorsese's just dropping that in everything.
Interesting. Do you think Anthony Davis plays tonight? That's our late night hammer. I'm voting no.
Ooh, I had him in. Wasn't
Don't like
really on my radar to consider.
The kind of midday downgrade, but it was a downgrade to questionable, and he's carried that tag all year, so I'm probably reading too much into it.
Yeah, I kind of wrote it off for that reason. I was just, Lakers marketing questionable, and I just moved on. So I didn't even actually look at the injury report, to be honest. So that, I hope I don't have too much if that's the case. Yeah, I was treating him as in, and it looks like Alex was as well. So I'm going to kind of ride with that unless we get specific news, at which point we'll obviously pivot. I think if we do get specific news, it would just mostly push LeBron up, and I would try and grab a bunch of additional LeBron share.
Yeah. All right. A few premium chat questions here. We got 7 minutes to lock up. Are you good on your upload?
Yeah, good enough.
For the most part. Okay. Yeah. Cousins or Drummond on FanDuel, large field GPP?
That was a
decision point for you.
Yeah, that was the big decision.
Can you pivot to Cousins if Drummond ends up being hey, he's not going to start? Do you have enough cash to do that?
Yeah, Cousins is $1,000 cheaper. So you can do that.
That would be a situation.
Get into that.
That would be a situation where I wouldn't beat myself up if I didn't have a second swap to use that $1,000.
I think there's.
I wouldn't be thrilled. I wouldn't be thrilled with it. But if all I had was that,
I mean, if you have to do it, it's a great direct swap in terms of the probability to put up a pretty good ceiling score, or at least give you a very workable score at the center spot. 1,000 is a lot. I don't mind leaving it on the table if I have a great lineup that's looking like a Hughes to the optimal and all of that, which could be possible tonight with some extreme value on the board still. I just don't love necessarily leaving that, or at least not saying that without being able to really dig into what it means in terms of who could I have gotten to. But it also, if you do that and then leave room for, like, if a LeBron steps up into that role, if AD doesn't go in a later time, and I think that game's later, then maybe you can make some swaps there and do it after the fact. So I don't hate it.
Chris Boucher or Patrick Williams on FanDuel? On DK, I would go Patrick Williams. I don't know the FanDuel answer.
Looks like I'm getting to more Boucher. Patrick Williams came up a little bit in my last run, but I'm getting to a decent amount more Boucher. Boucher a little bit more expensive, but looks like just in general he grades out better in both my projections and Alex's, which is pushing him up a little bit. Still don't love the unpredictability of his minutes and his opportunity, but the numbers are there.
And then last one in premium, Vooch and Keldon Johnson. No site given, or Lowry and DeMar.
Vooch and Keldon for me.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Yeah, either side.
Let's see. Emac and Josh's dad, can you give us the best DK play under 6,500? Who is popping out for me? Let me get back over here. If you're not already using DeMarcus Cousins, that would be answer number one. I don't hate Keldon Johnson, but he's small forward and power forward, so he qualifies for 4 of the 8 spots.
Yeah, I like that flexibility that Keldon gives you over there.
Kelly Oubre starting to shoot again. He's in my top 3 all-time favorite, or my top 3 current favorite players. I've told Jordan this before. That's just who could have more different lifestyles, me and Kelly Oubre, but he's probably my favorite player. I like him. I don't dislike Kobe White, but because I said I don't dislike him, that's probably not a vote of confidence. But those are the main ones that are popping for me. Cousins definitely number 1.
Yeah, I think Cousins with a bullet is the answer there.
4 minutes to go. Can we Emac smoked some Tijuana Gold back in the day? Yes, it was the Greenidge back in the day. I'd wonder if Jordan was alive then. That would be the hard part. Since I last partook, it's been a while. Got to watch out for those seeds and stems. You want the sticky buds. All right, we had a good question. What do you feel about Ja Morant?
He was the top play coming up from that side of that game. But like I said before, it's just a game that isn't really popping for me in general. Everybody in that game, the obvious players anyway, the Jaws, the Ingrams of the world, they're fine. They're in that mid-range, where you can mix and match them. But I wouldn't look to be over the field on them. I think they're just rosterable around where the field has them, which is in the mid-teens.
All right, people saying what are seeds? Yeah, we didn't have the vape cartridges back then. All right, we had little baggies. You had to kind of sort it out. Maybe you'd crush up a pop can.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't have seeds in it anymore either.
Yeah, no seeds or stems. Yeah, there we go.
Hydroponics and stuff, man.
All right, reminder, lock is in 3 minutes, but we're staying on for another 30. We're going to talk some super draft here. And as the news comes in for all these other games, we'll break it down once we have a little bit more certainty. So that is the important thing that we have here. And then the other thing on super draft, remember, they have a massive contest tomorrow for the Super Bowl. And Super Bowl locks tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern. So we're going to have all kinds of time to look at that. We're going to have 3 hours of shows leading up to kickoff. So we've got you covered there. Eric Gordon or Hamidou Diallo? I'm going to go with Hamidou.
Yeah, I think so.
Hamadoubi.
Just leave you hanging with that. I think so. Gordon wasn't really a guy who was coming up for me pretty much at all. I was much more on Diallo earlier in the day before we found out that SGA and all the other guys were going to be playing, and things completely changed. But I think in that direct 1v1, I would still go Diallo. I think there's a little bit more certainty of role. A guy who just does a little bit more as well, not totally as scoring dependent. He could grab some rebounds in the situation he's in tonight. So I would go toward Diallo.
Giannis and Cole Anthony or Luka and Jeff Green on FanDuel.
Luka and Jeff Green.
Okay, I'll put that in there. Dort or Derek? Oh, that's a late one. Derek White for me. I think that gets us, and we're almost at lock here. And I don't have any players locked in. This is fun.
I got my lineups up. Nice and easy, casual.
I laugh in the chat likes the Hamadoubi. It was a different time back then. It's a whole different world. Emac made bowls out of apples and not pop cans. Well, we did apples too because we grew up in the middle of the apple capital of the world, Wenatchee, Washington.
That's convenient for you guys.
It worked out. In a pinch, you could always use toilet paper roll. Get the little what is it? The little netting from underneath the sink.
Oh yeah, use that as a screen. Yep.
Use it as
Yep.
I'm just allegedly.
I like the soda can one though. I always felt a little, for some reason, less creative, lower end. I don't know. It's a little low rent on the soda can one.
All right, and we are at the first lock. Oh, they're saying gross. Well, we didn't have a lot of options back then, so kind of do it.
Not toilet.
That was more efficient than the actual rolling of the doobies. A lot would get wasted on those. So. Gravity bongs and no 2-liter bongs. Never did that.
Ooh, those are fun. There's a reason I can't take a deep breath these days.
I think I grew up with EMAC. Just saying. It was a lifetime ago, but it did happen. All right, now we're comfortably at lock here. We are into the next hour. A little more relaxed here. We don't have anything to panic about. We're going to go 30 minutes, and we're going to talk SuperDraft. But in the meantime, while we're calling that stuff up, I just realized I didn't register for more contests. I meant to do that. Oh, well, whatevs. I guess I'll be playing a little over here at SuperDraft. So, again, some exciting news from them. They have a new partner, Caesars Palace. So they're under the Caesars Rewards umbrella. So kind of how other sites, DK has crowns and FanDuel has points and Yahoo has points. This is their version of a rake back or something. The cool thing about this is those reward points are usable as credits at any of the Caesar properties, in addition to other gaming aspects, from the DFS to sports betting, etc. So what they're trying to do is be a full suite thing, so they can capture.
Fournier questionable in that early game.
Well, that would already locked. Thank you. Hey, the best part about this locking, they're not going to tip off for another 11 minutes.
Right.
I don't even want to get started on that rant.
That is, yeah.
I did that one the other night. I'm not going to subject everybody to this.
Between the actual tip and the lock time. I don't know why they don't just build it into the lock. Games never actually start at the lock time.
It's because it's the NBA's official start time, right. Even though you can have MLB going at 7:05, 7:07, and 7:10, and they'll all start before the 7 o'clock NBA first tip-off. Drives me nuts.
Yep.
All right. So back to the big game. That's tomorrow, the Super Bowl, if we're allowed to say that. $1.3 million in prize pools. They are counting on Overlay. They want you to jump on in and enjoy some of that. You also can use the promo code Awesemo21. That's Awesemo21. When you make your first deposit, you put in $50. They will match you up to $50 in super cash, which comes out of your account first when you enter those contests. So what is different about them? You literally can play everybody or anybody. Well, how can you do that? As long as you meet the position requirements, there is no salary cap there. Well, gosh, aren't we going to have lineup overlap? Sometimes. No more or no less than we do in other situations because they have multipliers. So what they do for these star players, you get closer to 1, 1.05, 1.1 is your multiplier. If you're a bench warmer, you're going to be down there at 2.0, 1.95, 1.9, and they take your fantasy point baseline and multiply it by the multiplier. That's why it's called the multiplier. What about their fantasy scoring? It's on steroids. Basically, the best of Fanduel, the best of DraftKings, put those hands together. You get double-double, triple-double bonuses. You get 3-point bonuses. You get blocks and steals are worth 3. The highest scoring on all the sites out there, they've put it into one. It is pinball scoring. It is a lot of fun. They have late swap. They are optimizer friendly, meaning you can do CSV uploads as late swap, and Fantasy Cruncher does support their contests as well. So it's pretty cool. So let's go on over here and look. And the other part is, this sounds awfully confusing. Not to fear. We have the whole Awesemo projection page that does all the heavy lifting and figures all this stuff out for us. So let me go over and close out a couple things here. Let me get to our Awesemo projection page for SuperDraft. I'm going to refresh that. Terry, I'm going to give you the top 3 Awesemo plays over on SuperDraft, and let's talk through them, because there is, of course, context in this, and it's a whole new level, because just because we've got the raw points doesn't always mean they're the best play, because sometimes there's a reason why they have a high multiplier. So tonight, James Harden at 1.20. So James Harden with Russell Westbrook generally was 1 or 105, maybe a 1.1. Now he's with 3 superstars. They put them down to 1.2. Guess what? The other 2 guys aren't playing. All of a sudden, he becomes phenomenal, pops to the top. DeMarcus Cousins been coming off the bench for 17 to 20 minutes a game. All of a sudden, he's starting 1.75 multiplier. Both those guys come in at just over 70 SuperDraft points. To show you how impactful those multipliers are, the third highest guy is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He has a 1.3 multiplier. He comes in at 64. Then, out of nowhere, Jakob Poeltl? Yes, indeed, 1.8 multiplier. No LaMarcus Aldridge. So all of a sudden, we're projecting him for about 40 basis points. You tack on a 1.8 multiplier on that, and you get right around 60. That's pretty awesome. Luka, 1.05. He's coming in half a point less than Jakob Poeltl. That's impossible. That's SuperDraft.
And that's what's so much fun about this site. It's a little Wild West. It's all over the place, but it's fun that way. It takes some deep thinking and, some really trying to psych out the other people that are building lineups out there, and, trying still hewing toward those optimal constructions. But there's a little bit more thought into, since you can roster anybody, I put a little bit more into thinking about, all right, this is what people are going to be doing. This is where it's more not narrative based. I don't want to go down that road, but it is a little bit more gamer versus gamer kind of based for me.
Yes, I think that's a good way to consider that. So let me open up my little SuperDraft. Again, it's over there at superdraft.io, or you can download it in most app stores.
It's wild what the multiplier format does for a guy like Boogie too, because you're getting his raw projection was 42 based on the change of role, and that was going to be a great score for him on the other sites as a median projection with upside to 50 something, maybe 60 something. With this kicker on the multiplier that's not geared for the situation that he's in, he's going to be accelerated into, you said it, into the 70s. So, there is a great opportunity around him. I expect he's going to be pretty widely owned. I think a lot of people are going to be going to him first, since he was touted for the other sites throughout the industry. But I think he's a no-brainer of a play.
So would you play James Harden if you're just building one lineup for the block? He projects as number 1. He's probably going to be 70, 80% of the lineups. Some of those players that really stand out carry ungodly levels of ownership, especially when you have to play 3 guards.
Yeah, so I think when you get a multiplier that's not appropriate for the role like that, it's like getting a guy who's mispriced on one of the other sites that are salary based. So it's essentially, we're basically saying we're getting James Harden for, let's call it 9,000, or we're getting James Harden for 8,800 on FanDuel or something like that, as opposed to in the 10,000s. You can kind of take it that way. So I think it's just such an extreme value and such great upside for the 2 of them, Harden and Cousins, that I would probably start with both of them regardless of the popularity. I think they're just fundamental building blocks.
Right. And this is this is why I like looking at our projections, because as I start scrolling down the list, I get confused. And I don't know what I'm not getting to. So all of a sudden I'm looking at Ben Simmons, 1.35 multiplier going against Brooklyn, one of the fastest teams with the worst defenses. That feels great, but what am I giving up? I don't know, but I'm going to click him into my placeholder. I'm going with Cousins. If Joel Embiid were to play, I wouldn't mind going Embiid and Simmons and Harden and kind of hoping we get, one of those wild, wild West games like we've seen. What is it? Two or three different times Brooklyn has allowed at least 140 points in regulation in the last 3 weeks.
Ridiculous.
I don't know how that works. John Wall starting. So that's good to know. Or available to play. We'll see. Eric Pascal has been ruled out. Those are the last two moving parts here. So if I'm looking for a third guard, let's scroll down a little deeper. Kyle Lowry at 145. That's kind of interesting. Derek White at 1.6. I think I'd still go with Lowry. Lonzo Ball 1.65. Not a high enough paced game for me.
Yeah, I like the Lowry call at 1.45 there. I think we could squeeze a lot out of that going against Atlanta. I think there's potential that he and Trey could just get into a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of a track meet and run up the score a little bit. So out of the guys you just read off there, I think I like him at that multiplier the best.
All right. And guys, since we're kind of talking a bunch of different sites, if you want to just tag it with FD, SD for SuperDraft, DK, it'll help. We have time that we'll answer questions and stuff here for the next 20 minutes, but I want to make sure I know what side it is. So like we can answer appropriately. All right. Moving over to the forwards. I was going to say power forwards. Let's try it differently. Let's start from the bottom. I already know there's no great ones at 195 that popped up for us, but let's see what we can find here as I scroll up. I'm just trying a different look here. Ooh, we have Jeff Green at 185 going against Philly, missing the 2 stars. I'm going to put Jeff Green in. Now I have
very much in play
two Brooklyn players and 1 Philly player.
So this is sticking with the Cousins build and not going to the Embiid, right?
For the moment, but I don't dislike the thought of taking 2 from each side here. Draymond Green, a 175 multiplier. That's actually pretty good. So he's looking at 23 basis points. Again, it's the 2 points for blocks and steals. This is not the lineup of death Draymond Green anymore, though. So we're gonna move past him. Oh, I found
you and your pal Kelly Oubre play the same position on the site?
He does, and that's who I was just going to mention. Mr. Kelly Oubre, small forward and shooting guard eligible. He can play everything but center. He's going to be one of our 6 spots. I need him at the forward spot. Let's put him in there. And we've got one more here. Oops, I heard a little notification. Oops. Oh, this is from BMAC, not my brother though. My brother is BMAC. Strategy question: if you're adding up your team's projected ownerships using Awesemo's ownership projections, what total percentage of ownership are you trying to stay under in a 5,800 person on DK to make sure you are creating enough leverage on slates like tonight? That's a trick question and a little bit loaded. So I'm going to give you the caveman high-level explanation. Terry can kind of dig into it a little more since he focuses on this. I play in the low-dollar tournaments where this is not as much of an issue, so I'm okay with just kind of playing the best plays and then capping my ownership and just letting the chips fall where they may. But on these, there's a couple different ways you can look at ownership. Adding it up is not always creating it equal. Multiplying them all together is another way to look at it. Using both of those in conjunction, so you have the sum and the product, also help you out, but you also need a baseline of what's going on for that day's contest with what the more popular plays are going to be, so you know if it's going to be higher or lower, because when you're on a 2-game, a 4-game, a 7-game, a 9-game slate, that all varies. So there is no hard and fast number. The other thing that can really make it a little bit wonky, this isn't as great in basketball because generally the best plays are the ones that draw the most ownership. Just makes sense. This is the most projectable sport we have. In football, maybe you pick somebody a little bit different, or by pairing players together, you may create a little bit of leverage within your leverage. And then in baseball, you can go with the lower owned players because it's such an event-based sport. And all of a sudden you need, the 5% cheapo stack, put 3 guys in at that, and you're going to be incredibly unique from everybody else. So it's all about context. But for his question, what would sort of be your guideline for a mid-level tournament on a 9-game slate like tonight? Concepts will go across FanDuel and DraftKings here.
Yeah, so ownership sum is not something that I really look at very much. I use ownership product, like you were saying, where we're multiplying all those ownership percentages together. And what that's telling us is the likelihood that all of those guys in that lineup are going to be owned in the same lineup. You can divide that into one, find out the likelihood of that not happening, and then divide that into the context of your slate size to get an actual number for your slate. What are the odds that someone else will have that lineup? That's going a little bit beyond the scope of the question, I think, though. Let me see if I can get to my crunch here and just pull up best way to do this would be put ownership on there. And this is going to take a half a second because I have 900 lineups it's going to try and drop this ownership into while I'm talking about it. So this is one of the things we love and hate about Fantasy Cruncher. It's so great, but sometimes it takes a little bit of a second when there's a lot to build on. And there we go. I killed enough time. So just sorting these, got to do one more thing here. Sorting these by projection. If you wanted to talk ownership sum, I think on a slate of this size, it looks like something like some of these highest projected lineups are getting into like the 230s in terms of ownership sum. And again, it's kind of irrelevant, ownership sum, to what we're really doing, because all that's telling us is you've built in 2 guys who are super low owned, but they might not be the best values, or you've used a bunch of guys who are not very highly owned, but again, are not the best values, the best plays on the slate, the Emax point. But if you wanted to go by ownership sum, you can. In which case, I think for a slate this size, always take a baseline, look at what the optimal ownership is, and then carve off 10 to 15% would be fine. If you wanted to go drop from the 220s, 230s at the highest end and jump down to like anything under 200, I think you'd be setting yourself well apart from the field. But again, you're probably going to be wiping out too many lineups that have some of those heavily owned guys who are foundational plays, like a Boogie Cousins, like a Harden tonight. So it's a flawed way of doing things, but you can go that route if you're determined to.
Yes. And because you're thinking about that, you're ready for this next level kind of stuff.
Yep.
So that's key. All right. So back to SuperDraft here. We do have a lot of room in the contest. I got to do one more guy here, and then I'm going to make another lineup. So I'm going to go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I'm going to do, and I'm changing it to MB just because I want the stack there. So for those of you scoring along at home, I have my pivot away from Embiid if needed is going to be Cousins, but I've got Harden, Simmons, Jeff Green, and Cousins, so I'm getting some nice synergy there. I have Kyle Lowry with the 1.45 multiplier, which I think he should be closer to about a 1.3, so we're getting about a 10% adjustment there. Kelly Oubre, the way he's playing, he should probably be a 1.4, 1.45 kind of guy. And with him at 1.65, at the minutes he's going to play, the shot attempts and everything, that 1.65 is going to have him soaring above the guys like Luka Doncic if he just sinks half his shots. It can get pretty wild with these leverage plays.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I like the decisions you made there. And that's what we're looking for is, we mentioned the guys who were mispriced for their role. There's also the opportunity to grab guys like that who have regressed to their usual production. Oubre was down to start the season, but as you mentioned, he's been playing a little bit better. And the price is not, or the multiplier in this case, price on the other sides, has not fully adjusted to account for that. So this is, again, like getting a guy at a discount. You can look at the multiplier in a way as the guy's salary and think of it in those terms. When the multiplier is too high, it's the same as the salary being too low. You're creating value there. So those are guys who are also going to be, pretty popular. The guys who were mispriced, misowned, or mismultiplied.
All right. So here's a couple other things. We have 43 minutes until lock on SuperDraft. Right now, their biggest contest, $15 entry fee, the $65,000 jump shot, has 80%, is 80% empty. That means it is 20% full. Based on some rough math and where they're going to end, and knowing that other gamers will have time to turn their attention towards this away from the other games, but they're all still waiting on a lot of the news as well, the Sharks and everybody who's put their money into the other lineups. I don't think we're going to get more than 80% full on this one tonight. I think we've hit the nice little quiet sweet spot. People are ready for the Super Bowl. They've been playing MMA. They're doing other things right now. So what that essentially means is you're not paying reg tonight if it stays at that level. That means there's implied value. You still have to beat, 77% of the people, but it's not like having to beat, the full, or let me rephrase it. You've got to be 60, 3% of the people, as opposed to beating, a much higher figure to get more than double up your payout. So that's a good one. $15 too rich for you? No worries there. They've got their $4 contest that's not quite half full. And then they have their dollar contest. If you just want to test that out, that's probably going to fill, but there's 2,500 spots left. That is a 150 max as well. You can kind of test your skill set in there on this. They have some quarter contests. They have a free contest that you can jump in. And I think they have the nickel there. 150 max, just a nickel. That's $7, $7.50. You can try out some strategies. Can you talk for a second?
Yeah, sure. No problem. I was just scrolling through Slack while you were talking, and our pal, the fake Ryan in there, just mentioned that he's so glad that the Knicks have Obi Toppin and not Halliburton as their rookie this year. Yeah, Ryan, I'm right there with you, pal. It's Obi not exactly hitting our expectations, or at least the New York Post's lofty expectations for him, and Halliburton's been tearing it up lately. Kid's a heck of a player already. So, yeah, kind of wish that draft had gone the other way for the old Knickerbockers, but makes a lot of sense that we are where we are.
All right, so let's build another one here. And Chad, if you have some super draft questions, let's talk about this. Emac have COVID? No, I hope not. I did get my hair cut today, but I was wearing a mask, as was the person cutting my hair.
Wow, that's gutsy. That's what all this is from. I haven't been to a barber in like a year.
They come to our house, so it makes it easier.
Oh, that's handy at least.
There was someone,
the dog to do it, but no good.
There was someone in our neighborhood that got furloughed at the beginning of all of this. And so he started cutting everybody's hair because he was a stylist at all this stuff. So his wife knew a lot of people because she's a teacher. So she knows a lot of the families. And now he opened up his own shop. So instead of driving in towards the city an hour and a half each day, he only has to go 10 minutes. He got his own one-stop shop. And then because there's still pandemic, he'll still come out and we sit on our porch or whatever and he cuts our hair. So,
sweet.
It's pretty cool. Not a bad way to do it.
People wandering around out here doing it, or at least enough people just out on the sidewalk with scissors that would be willing.
All right, let's look at our guys here. So how do you feel? Let's look at some cheapies we could put in here, or some high leverage guys that we can put in, like perhaps a Norman Powell at 1.8.
I like that.
Let's build around a Norman Powell 1.8. So let me jump in the and one here.
Yeah, we talked about him as a potential mixing kind of a guy on the other sites, and with the multiplier in play, I think he definitely vault onto the board firmly. After the multiplier projection of 56 puts him 0.09 behind Anthony Davis and 0.06 ahead of teammate Pascal Siakam. So yeah, it's strange, but that's how the multipliers work. So yeah, I could definitely get to some Powell as a building block there.
And let's find out some other. I have Fred VanVleet. I always like him. He's not going to make our lineup. How about let's do another little synergistic play here. How about a little Steph Curry, Luka Doncic going against each other? Curry 1.25, Doncic 1.5. Oh, but Doncic also is small forward eligible, so that gives us flexibility. He qualifies for 6 of the spots. So that's one thing they have introduced here more is some additional positional flexibility, because guess what? The game has changed a ton, but even their centers, they have very few true traditional centers. Like Embiid and Towns and Davis are all power forward centered, but they do have Drummond, Capella, Joe Val, Josh Allen, the guys that you would think of as centers. Steven Adams, they're still Brook Lopez, Cousins, they're still set that way. So I took out Cousins from my last lineup and I put in Embiid. So I want Cousins in this lineup. So now I'm looking at Powell, Curry, Doncic, and Cousins. Let's look at our payout structure here. Now, in most of these games, it is double your money for the minimum payout. That's what it used to be back in the day. And especially this is the $1 one. I like this one because it has a little more flat payout version here. So first place gets 10% of the prize pool. That's cool. Second is half of first. Starts to get a little DK Fanduel-esque when we get down there, but 10th place does get 20, but we're just risking $1 per time here. And even if we have just an okay lineup and an okay cash, we're going to get 2-3x our money. And that's something that you need to have about a 3% finish these days on the other big top heavy tournaments. So it's still giving you a little bit of a chance here. Anybody popping for you here, Terry, to finish my guard spot?
You need another guard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What about Colin Sexton? I think he's a little off the radar for people in terms of what everybody's talked up from that game, and decent multiplier 1.6. Particularly, did we get news on the rest of the status in that game yet? I don't think we have.
We do. We know that Larry Nance is available.
Okay. So I don't think that's going to really eat into anything that Sexton's doing. Could give him an opportunity to pick up a couple additional assists, working with Nance. So I think Sexton makes some sense there, and he's near the top of the board. And to the most important point, I think he would be less on the radar for people than some of these other choices at that level.
You know what I just realized? Joel Embiid is power forward eligible. I just said that, but now it's clicking with me. I'm putting him in this lineup as well. 1.15. I think we can do better. I want a better leverage play than that. Let's see. Zion, no, we've already done.
You might be picking up leverage just from the pure fact of not a lot of people are probably going to be rolling him and Boogie, putting him at the power forward. I think you're already thinking outside the box and gaining on the field just through doing that. So I don't necessarily think it's take him off just for that reason.
Let's go that route, and then that leaves us with one spot left. I could go with Anthony Davis. Could always late swap to LeBron if we so choose.
Not a bad hit at all, yeah.
Or vice versa. Why don't I put LeBron in?
What's LeBron's multiplier?
1.15, and Davis is 1.2. So I'm gonna put in LeBron. Just because I don't want to get carried away and forget and that I have this lineup, and at least I know LeBron is playing. But if I get news that Davis, is in, I'll probably pivot over to him.
Yeah, and nice to be able to do that without having to worry about salary differences and the most frustrating thing in the world when you hit that $100 salary difference and you can't do the key change that you want to do and you got to put some scrub in the other spot. So it's a cool feature of the site.
Really surprised we haven't gotten more news now that we're 35 minutes away from the rest of the game's locking. Got 1,000 of you left. Hit that like button on the way out. It's Terry and I hanging out here on a Saturday night with you, courtesy of SuperDraft. Again, when you make your initial deposit over there, if you use the promo code Awesemo21, that's Awesemo21, they will match you up to $50 with your initial deposit. That will come in the form of Super Cash, which comes out into your account into contests first. We'll do one more here. Who's your dream scenario to put into these? You want to do another game stack?
Let's see. We went with the Curry Doncic game stack. That one.
And we've got Brooklyn, Philly.
The one before.
Houston's defense has gotten a little better. We could do something with Toronto, Atlanta.
That would be probably the next best target, I think. I don't really love double dipping into any of these others that I'm looking at.
So I've got Kyle Lowry on one of my lineups. I have Norman Powell on one of my lineups. Is there an elite backcourt player you can think of from Toronto?
I think you could be an elite backcourt player or a frontcourt player?
An elite backcourt player.
Are we talking about Fred Van
Fred Van Elite. Come on, you got to pronounce his name correctly there.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. So would you be swapping him in for where you had Powell?
No, I'm starting from scratch here.
Okay.
So we're going to go Van Vliet and Young. I think Siakam's kind of nice. Now the real question is, do we go with the Collins? Do we go with the Capella? Capella's got a 1.35 multiplier. Collins has a 1.5 multiplier. They're tempting us here. Generally, I prefer Capella because he's going to hoover up more rebounds. I think he's still leading the league in rebounds, or at least he's top 3 with nearly 15 per game.
That's close. That's really close. I liked Collins better on the.
We get the double bonus.
I was gonna say with the bonuses and the kicking
and 3 points for blocks and steals.
Blocks. Right, the blocks would be key. I think the blocks probably, or the potential for blocks, might put it over the top with Capella for me, but they're very, very close.
All right, so there we got 2 from each side. So let's see. What about the late game? Is there anybody? Well, I like Jeremy Grant at a 1.45 multiplier, but he's going against a couple good defenders.
Yeah, he was a guy that was that I noticed scrolling down through here. I don't love going against the Lakers with plays like that, though. And, he's a guy who we've talked about throughout the year in terms of he was producing, then he was down a little bit. And we think he's better than we thought he was coming in, and he's got a clear role. But
the shot volume's down a little bit, too, from what it was in the first 10 games.
Yeah, Blake was getting a little bit more usage, if I remember correctly, from the last time I looked at it. But I think that more than anything, just not wanting to take a guy like that against this Lakers team would probably push him a little further off the board for me. Did we use Oubre in that other one?
Let's use Oubre in this one.
Yeah, he's right there. And then I know I mentioned him as my favorite guy from a game I didn't really like earlier, but Ingram could potentially be in play in that same Siakam Simmons kind of range.
All right, we'll use, let's try Oubre as a guard this time. Let's go with, do you like Ingram better or? Yeah, I like Ingram. He just does everything a little bit more than Zion. Zion gets that double-double bonus, though. That's like no, actually he doesn't. That's a misnomer. I'm sorry, because he's only averaging like, 7? I just wrote this up the other day. He's only averaging like 7.2 rebounds per game. So no. I lied. I think he has 3 double-doubles on the year.
Yeah, so you're not sacrificing much there. I like the Ingram side of it better. He was the guy that was coming up for me. Zion was a bust for me yesterday, or a bust pick for me, I should say. I was ahead of the game on that one, and wasn't coming up for me like at all. But he's a guy I don't really get to a lot, just in general.
Little DeMar DeRozan, wrap up our Saturday night with some double D.
That works. Yeah, he's a guy we didn't really talk very much about at all, and should be thrust into a little bit more of a prominent role already, a featured guy in that offense, but without LaMarcus Aldridge out there. We talked about some of the other pieces from that game with Dejounte Murray and Keldon, but DDR is right there.
All right, so we are 30 minutes out from lock now, but I do want to point out that the main contest still just 2,100 out of 5,000. That's their $15 entry. Again, I think that's only going to get into the low 4,000s. May not even quite crest that. You've got the 4-point play. That's just now almost half full. And then the dollar contest that I was jumping into, still 2,000 spots left in that. So if you guys want to jump on over there, make your first deposit, get it set up, use the promo code Awesemo21 at superdraft.io, or you can go into the App Store and download their app and get yourself set up, because tomorrow, in addition to the overlay tonight, you got a half hour to get there and do this. But tomorrow, they got 1.3 million, over 1.3 million in their prize pool. If you're a big baller, not me, probably not Terry, maybe Jordan, definitely Alex. They have $1 million contest, $300,000 to first. Have you seen the entry fee on this, Terry?
No, what do you got?
$4,000.
Yowza.
Right now, 66.
For that.
66 of 267. Now, for those of you looking for a more palatable entry point, the $4 contest. There we go. Right now, that has 5,000 out of 27,000. I will be shocked if that goes more than 22,000 tomorrow. That is a 150 max, but everybody's going to have their attention all over the place and elsewhere. You definitely want to check that out. Now, what they do differently on their single game showdown slates, and they do this for football, they also do it for basketball, but they have what they call their what do they call it? The champion slot. So the champion slot, in addition to all the pinball scoring and their multipliers, they get another 50% on top of it. That is a game changer. That is where you see someone like, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans or someone all of a sudden become an amazing play. Maybe you just get the one long touchdown from Mecole Hardman, and now you're jacking it up with all that extra multiplier. Scores can really swing. So it's the other sides do have their multipliers, but when you get the multiplier on the multiplier, it has some wild effects. So it's a different mindset playing on this. But again, like we mentioned, they have their low stakes contest. They have the nickel. I was playing that a bunch for baseball and last year for basketball because I could put in 150. And if I lost $7.50, but I had a lot of fun just screwing around and doing that and getting the lay of the land and figure out what's going on. That's a good way to get in. They want you to try this out. And again, they're partnered up now with Caesars, and they're doing the Caesars rewards, which are available for use at any Caesars property, as well as any Caesars gaming. So that's a pretty good deal there. Any final
That's way
thoughts?
directly to the buffet at Benny Caesar's property. Not bad.
Ooh, buffet. That's right. It's almost dinner time. Well, technically it's
Man.
after dinner time.
I didn't have lunch either. I'm starving.
Let's see here. Any final thoughts other than we've got 3 hours of Super Bowl content coming in tomorrow? We also have the NBA strategy show that will be 1 hour before NBA lock. And I'm calling up my notes, which is tomorrow at, drum roll, please, 1 o'clock. Did I write that down right? I think 1 o'clock. In any event, there's 4 games. I think they all go off at, I'm just going to call it the schedule now. It's too
There's
hard.
basketball tomorrow.
There is. But the best part about basketball tomorrow, 1, it's before the big game, and 2, cross sport props.
Yes.
We will be doing live before lock at noon. The NBA has 5 games tomorrow. There was one that was postponed. Otherwise, they would have had 6. They're going to 3 at 1 o'clock, 1 at 2, and 1 at 3. They're all going to be done at least an hour, if not more, than before the Super Bowl. So check that out. I'm going to go have some fun looking at cross-sport prop bets, and it's going to be a good night here.
We've got a lot of coverage, too. We had a betting show on the site that you guys can pull up the archive for if you're interested in some of those prop bets, some of those cross-sport bets. The guys talk some of that up. And we've got a good amount of just prop bets and good bet content on the site, too. So as you're getting away from DFS, getting into some of the betting content, we've got a lot for you over there, too.
All right. With that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. Thank you to Terry. Thank you to Jordan. Thank you to SuperDraft. Let's have some fun, gamers. With that, good luck. Embiid is starting on Saturday.
Embiid is starting?